on Thanksgiving Day, he refused to sell up. I was willing to sell up with him. Remember, this attached max. They can't shoot in the cells, so once you go at it, it's to the death. So somebody's dead, or you both cuff up. So he wouldn't sell up with me, but he came out and I told him, I told him, I'm in the hat. He goes, yeah, that's between you and the commission, brother. You've been doing this all longer than me. I'm not trying to be a part of that. Well, I knew it was coming. Shame on me for not getting off first. But, Thanksgiving Day, him and another guy come out, and this piece is beautiful. If I'd have used this piece on somebody, they would not have walked away. That's for sure. I mean, this piece was about this big, all told. And the steel on it alone was about 8 or 9 inches. And it was good steel. It was done in a machine shop. And then it had a handle on it. And we're walking, and it feels like somebody's patting me on the back real hard. And then again, and I turn around, and so it hits me twice in the back, just misses my spine. I mean, it's in my spine, but it just misses going deep enough. So he hits me in the spine twice in the back. I turn around, he hits me in the chest twice. And then, I hold up my hand right here. I don't know if you can see it. And there's a scar right there where it went all the way through my thumb. There's another one right there, another one right there. I close my fist. There's another one right there. So, and then I tried to swing on him. He hits the ground and he throws the piece. So they put the yard down. The gunners do. And this guard, he's telling me, Casper, get out, Casper. I don't want to shoot you. And this guy's just laying there with this shit-eating grin on his face like he'd done something. And I want to see him shot. Number one. Number two, no matter what standing I am, I'm still with the tip. And this guy's making us look bad. I said, in my day, you didn't finish the job. You were the next guy in the hit parade. Get up and finish what you started, punk. Get up and finish what the you started. You're making us look bad. And I'm dripping blood, and I wrap my hand in a coat or a T-shirt or something. And he's just laying there with a grin like he'd done something. If you come at me, you better come right or stay the home, because I ain't forgot how to do anything I've been trained to do or have been doing. And while all the mouths are running, I'm going to defend myself and mine.
So I'm greatly honored to have Casper Odinson with us today. He's had many offers of documentaries and opportunities to tell his story. And many of you may have seen him in the documentary Nat Geo about the brand, Aryan Brotherhood. And 40 years in the prison system, only got released approximately 6 months ago. Absolutely mind-blowing story that we've never heard before. It's going to be his life story. I imagine it's going to be so long, it might have to be in a few parts. But huge thank you for coming on, Casper, to start with.
Yeah, you're welcome. A couple of corrections right from the gate. I did a total of 38 years and 9 months. The first 11 of it or so in pieces. I went on a 4-year sentence at first, turned that into 7. I got out. I went back for 2, got out, went back for 2. And this last time what happened was I got struck out under California's 3 strikes, and I got 2 life sentences plus extra time. So I did almost 3 decades on that. And yes, I've been out about 6.5 months right now.
Wow, I can't imagine. I mean, I only got a taste of it in Arizona, but almost 40 years, I would have gone insane. So I can't imagine the scope of what you've been through. Now, before we do get back into, your life history, could you just tell the viewers one of your most insane prison stories, just so they can have an idea of what's coming?
Well, one of the things that I remember when I first came into the system, I didn't know anything about any of the prison gangs or organizations or, my exposure to any kind of organized crime was with Italian businessmen in Southern California between LA and Palm Springs, and an outlaw motorcycle club. So those were my only knowledge, and down in Central America after the military. So I knew nothing about anything that was going on in prison. I'd recently been incarcerated beyond a little stint in the county jail. This was my first time. It was January of 1984. And I spent a couple of years in the county jail. And, there's a couple of things that happened there. I caught a couple of staff assaults there. Did a move on a friend of friends of mine who went out sideways and then hit a child molester, with another guy. These guys made it to the pen before me by far. Their sentences were carried out much more swiftly than mine. I was fighting cases in the county jail, and I'd gone between Riverside, Orange, and LA counties. So I had different cases going on. By the time they were all meted out, I hit Chino in January of 1986. And while I was there, I met up with my former cellie, who he got the child molester with. And, he was telling me something that, about something that happened, in the big house, as they call it. Whereas this guy had gotten some brown, he was bringing it in. He'd been warned several times, and he was a big boy, had some size to him, and thought he was going to just do his own program. And basically told the organization to get bent. And so the next morning, around breakfast time, the unlock, they went in a cell, 3 of them. They hit his cellie, a couple of times just to get him out of the way, not to mortally wound him. And they killed him. They went about butchering him quite handily. They cut open his stomach and pulled out his intestines and extracted the brown in the balloons from his intestines. And then they kind of strung him up like Yule ornaments. And this was a message to everybody that you give us ours. You give unto Caesar what is his, if you will. And that was just one of the first things I had learned about. And I thought it was kind of fantastical because not going to the joint. When I got to the joint, actually I had learned that this was actually really happened. And I realized real quick right there while I was still in the guidance center, there are those who get noticed in a good way. There are those that get noticed in a bad way. And there are those that try to go unnoticed at all and just do their time. Now, a guy could come into the system when I came in and he could just do his own time, but he couldn't put any kind of tattoos on him. He couldn't be involved in any kind of rackets, any trades, anything like that made him a reg all of a sudden, or somebody in those circles, not somebody who's just trying to be a lame, as you would say, just trying to do his time. So, I knew I wasn't going to be one of those guys, and I didn't really know anything about the organization yet. So, but I knew there was things in there. I knew what was going on, and I decided I just didn't want to be one of those guys that got stepped on. And I don't care how big you are, how tough you think you are. I mean, things happen to guys, and that's just all there is to it. And back then it was a very violent time between, the Aryans and the northern Mexicans, and which everybody thinks it's black and white, but actually the Northerners were the number one, enemy to the Aryans. So, and they were quite handy at what they did, and obviously the Aryans were quite handy at what they did, what we did. So, there was an incident, where I had an opportunity to be a part of something, and I almost begged off of it, and it turned into a little melee, a little mini riot. Where I landed when I went to Chino, they got a Cypress, Sycamore, Madrone, and Birch Hall. And Birch Hall had like all the sissies, the homosexuals, or the guys that were locked up that weren't in PC, in actual protective custody, but all the lightweights. It was a soft block, a wing. And anybody who was a fish, a first timer in the joint, like myself, that's where I got put. And I was in a day room at that, not a cell. So, it was around Martin Luther King's birthday that some event arose over the TV, the single TV in there, and it became black and white real quick. And 4 or 5 of my homeboys and friends, and we broke up the sinks that were made of porcelain at the time, which they are no longer made of. We wrapped them with T-shirts and made shanks out of them, and we stabbed up these African-American fellas, and that's just the way it was. And they didn't catch anybody in the act. They didn't have cameras back then, but they had plenty of rats. So I ended up going to Cypress Deep Seg, which was a hole outside of Palm Hall at that time, before you got to Palm Hall. And after that, they put me in Sycamore. And while I was in Sycamore, this guy Bear, who did the ratting and thought we didn't know, me and a friend Rodney, when this guy came out on the day he was going home a couple of weeks later, we had our doors to our cells open, and we'd established that kind of juice from what happened in Birch Hall. And what happened was, as he was coming, he's okay, fellas, see you. We never tipped the hand, played it close to the vest, and he thought he was good. He thought the doors were locked on top of everything else, and we came out and we thumped him up and we threw him off the third tier. And he survived. He broke his back and some other bones, but he survived. And that's the only reason I'm telling you about it. And that was my introduction into prison, waiting to be placed somewhere. And when I was placed, I tried to go. I went to see the counselor. He says, "Where would you like to go?" And I said, "Hey, I'd like to go to this underwater salvage and diving program you got right over here, and maybe learn something and get out." And he laughed at me. He laughed at me. I said, "Hey, what the fuck's so funny? What's funny here? Am I missing something?" He says, "Yeah, you're not going over there. That's level 1. You're going to level 3 or 4. Where would you like to go, Tracy or Soledad?" I said, "I'm a fish. I'm a first termer, honorably discharged veteran. I'm, not the big killer crime. What are you talking about?" He said, "Yeah, well, you scored high on the IQ test, and so you could manipulate less sophisticated staff and prisoners. So, you got to be closely supervised." So Soledad and Tracy were gladiator schools back then, DVI and CTF. And mostly guys were under 25. And so I ended up at Soledad, and I wasn't there long when I was involved in a riot that was a carryover from a riot that had happened prior to me getting there that previous December. I got there in February. The December before that, there was a setup by a black sergeant involved who was a Crip. And, he had set up 10 or 12 whites in a day room. They got stabbed up and beat up. This is all public record. When they went in there, the guards used to come off the roof back then. They didn't have gun rails, so they had to come off the roof to shoot. And they came in and they shot each other in the crossfire. I think 3 guards shot each other in the crossfire. No prisoners were shot. And, and at the end, you had a bunch of stabbed up Aryan men, but you had more beat up and stabbed up, black men, so it's like, but there was a carryover from that, which took place, shortly after I arrived at Soledad, and it happened on the night yard. And fog was rolling in back then. They didn't shut you down for fog count unless it was really extreme. And, a guy came by my cell, homeboy of mine, Danny, and he says, "Here's a card," because I didn't have a card to go out to the yard at night yet because I just got there. Just got off Fish Row, as a matter of fact. And I was in what they called F wing, which was a close custody wing, a fuck up wing, actually. And so he comes by with an ID card, a red card. He says, "Here, just put your thumb over it and walk out to the yard with the rest of us." That's all right. "Anything I need to know about it?" He goes, "Yeah, you'll get something when you get out there." I saw, "It's cracking." He goes, "Yeah, it's going to be popping, we're getting retaliation, And so 7 guys went to the hole for that. The rest of us got locked down. And, that was my introduction to prison within the first 90 days or so. So
I'm sure the viewers are like, the jaws are dropping right now just to hear this introduction, really, to what it's going to get to later on. But before we get to that, let's just go back and figure out how this all started. Where were you born?
I was born in Long Beach, California, and I was raised in a town called Cerritos up till the age of about 14 or so. My folks still had their house there, but I was a surfer, avid surfer. I started surfing at Seal Beach when I was 12, and Huntington Beach, the cliffs north of the pier, became my home break. And so that's where I was called home, where I claimed. As I got old enough to leave home, I went to Huntington Beach. I lived down on 2nd Street. And so Huntington Beach, Orange County was where I was at. That was home. And I've been all over, though, between there and L.A., East L.A. I boxed, and there was no boxing. And really, there was some place in Santa Ana called Foxy's Gym. I don't know if that's still there, but I boxed at the Main Street Gym, the Olympic Auditorium Gym, Seaside Gym down in Long Beach, which was owned by boxer Mike Weaver. I went around to wherever the boxing club fights and training was permissible. I basically trained out of the Olympic Auditorium Gym with Cesar Perez and Freddie Marino. And, one of my highlights of my life, which was not about anything when it comes to the fight game, but I got to spar with Sean O'Grady, when he was defending the championship, the lightweight championship. So I went a couple of rounds with Sean, and it was something to got a picture with him. But
what got you interested in boxing at such a young age?
Well, I was a slight kid. Even when I went into the military on my 17th birthday, I was barely 5 feet. I wrestled in high school. I was like 135 pounds, dripping wet. So I couldn't play football. And while I was all right baseball, I wasn't a good athlete team wise. And so, and I got picked on by the bullies in the neighborhood and stuff a lot as a kid. I'm 3 and 4 at a time. I was literally the kid, hard to imagine now, but I was literally the kid that looked over the fence, left and right to see where everybody was at so I could scurry on home. Until one day I just decided I was done taking a beating, and I started fighting back. So I got involved with martial disciplines first, and that was okay, but there was really no contact to it. And most of the people I've seen use it on the street in real fights doesn't really work out for them. Never worked out for me. I got into fighting, boxing, and I learned about pancrase, and which is boxing and wrestling combination, and that became my favorite discipline for a long time. And I've tried a little bit of everything. I've honed what works best for me. I'm right now. I'm even 5'7". I weigh 220. I'm going to be 62. I stay fit. I work out every morning. Boxing was a good fit for an individual. And there was a gym, first of all, down in East LA in the Hollenbeck gym, which the LAPD ran as part of a boxing program. And so you could go in there and you could train and you could get involved in club fights and stuff like that. And one thing led to another. I had a trainer who took me up named LJ Montoya from Artesia, California. And, I just went from that, but boxing seemed to be a good little outlet for me. You couldn't get into trouble. I took some good beatings. I'll tell you that. I took some good beat downs. I was more a brawler than a sweet science kind of pugilist. I had to hone that over the years, but I enjoyed it. Take it on the chin good. I don't have a glass jaw, that's for sure. Good legs. So
and you look about 40 something. What are you doing to stay so young, man? You got what was your family life like back when you was a kid?
I had a good family. I had no reason to end up in the system or in a life of crime at all. I had a good family. My father was a Midwestern farm boy from Iowa. My mom was one of 3 sisters from immigrants. So she was first generation in America. Her mom came from Ukraine. She was a Russian. I'm not sure about her dad's history really too much because I didn't know him. I never knew him. I barely knew her mom, my grandma there. I knew my dad's mother, my Oma, my Oma Nana. German, Irish, Russian American family, and raised in German American traditions, at holidays and stuff like that. It's a good family, good upper middle class family. The neighborhood I lived in was mostly people from Orange, who their dads were Orange County aerospace industry people. McDonnell Douglas, in Long Beach, Ford Aerospace in Orange County. Everything was. But the only blue collar people was my dad, who was a meat cutter after he retired from the Navy, and firemen and police officers. So I had a good upbringing.
Yeah, I've been a lot of those areas. Huntington Beach, in particular, really beautiful. So you said that your father was in the military. Did that influence you to join the military? Was it a family thing?
So yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. Until I married my wife, I knew nothing about my family beyond grandparents and my aunts and uncles and stuff like that. Ancestry.com opened up a lot for a lot of us. So, now I got my family history going all the way back in this country alone to, pre-Revolution War, So my ancestors on my father's side had been here since, before Washington, and the whole revolution. So, and I got a history all the way from that point on. my mom's side, like I said, she left Ukraine when it was still Russia, when it was just the borderland of Russia. And you dared not call her Ukrainian. She was a Russian, from Ukraine. And unfortunately, with the communism takeover, the Bolsheviks, that killed a whole bunch of records. So it's hard to get records on anything from that right there. My dad went in the military the day after Pearl Harbor. He was 16 years old. He was born in 1925. He forged his documents, and he went in the Navy, went to Great Lakes to boot camp. He ended up being a frogman, and was a UDT man, which is the forerunners of the Navy SEALs. And as a matter of fact, when he retired, he was a black hat, a trainer for SEALs, for the first SEAL teams when Kennedy enacted them. And I wanted to go and be a SEAL like my dad. The Navy wouldn't take me because I didn't have a high school diploma or a GED. So I would have had to wait a year till I was 18. I wasn't waiting. I wanted to get out of town. I wanted to go be in the military. Obviously, the Marines wouldn't take me to the Department of the Navy. And without an education beyond 10th grade, I certainly wasn't going to the Air Force. So just like in a seedy movie, I'm coming out of the recruiter's office, and there's this staff sergeant with a toothpick in his mouth leaning in the door jamb of he said, hey, kid, you want to jump out of airplanes? You want to wear a green beret? You want to do this? You want to do that? Come on in here. Let me show you some videos. And my dad put his hands on my shoulders, and he's smaller than I am. He put his hands on my shoulders and just keep walking. And he goes, come on. He goes, what you got something against the Army? Are you a Navy man or something? He goes, as a matter of fact, I am. Anyway, so we went in, we listened and everything. And the guy says, well, we'll go down and do the ASVAB test. And depending on what you score, we can depend on what we promised you. So, I went down and I took the ASVAB test, and I got a rather high score for somebody without a GED and so I had a couple of options open to me, and, it says, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to do something close to what my dad did. He goes, there's a couple of options, He goes, you can put some time in. You can go recon, in the cavalry or something like that. They got sniper scouts and things like that. And so you can go recon, with the cavalry. You can move up through that. You can go to Ranger School from that. You can go to what they called Robin Sage back then, which is what the Green Berets do. You qualification school. And you spend your time in and you move up the ladder. It's not like now where you can just go in and go where the promise to. You had to put your time in. So I went recon. I went to 19 Delta. Which is cavalry, with his 11 Bravo also, which is infantry. I got into trouble in the military. I was fortunate that I got out with an honorable discharge. It was only because I was a legacy because of my father. So,
what trouble?
I got some assaultive behavior, and I left from my training to a billeting. And I got into trouble, and they weren't going to let me go home for the holidays. And these are just regular military sergeants. They had CIBs, combat infantry badges, but they were fat slobs. I had no respect for them. They weren't anybody. My personal instructors were they were Rangers, and they cut good figures, and I respected the hell out of them. And these guys they were slobs, and they're trying to push the line. And I'd had enough of it. And so I got a little assaultive, and then I took off and decided I was going to see my family for the holidays. And so I did.
What year was that, Casper?
That was in 1980.
1980.
I went in 1979, and that was in 1980. And I separated later that year, with an honorable discharge after some disciplinary. And so, I got my benefits and everything, but didn't work out the way I wanted. Coming home to civilian life after that seemed like no problem. Just get back on the block, but it was a problem. I looked down at people that I used to look up to. I thought were cool. To me now they were like dregs, and they were slobs and bums, and they had no discipline, no self-respect. The military will teach you that, if nothing else, especially if you get in a good unit, good kind of training, where you have some respect and self-esteem about elitism and what you're doing, what you're being trained to do. It's just one story, they put us all in this room, And I was at Fort Knox, Kentucky, and they put us in this room at the Holder Weapons Complex, which is a big weapons complex there at Fort Knox. And they put us in this room, which was a classroom back then. And this general comes in with a couple of colonels, and there's like 40 of us in the unit. The unit just graduated, on a cusp of graduate. Says, we have a situation that developed. This is a need to know only. This is completely volunteer. Nobody's going to be judged if they don't. Anybody who wants to get up right now needs to get up and get to the back of the room. So about half the group got up and went to the back of the room. You got to understand, this is like, I went in 1979. 1979, a lot of people are just looking for a place to go because they got no home, recession, everything else. They're on the streets, they're just low level thugs. So, but half the group stayed. I mean, I went in the military to make my father proud and to be, somebody myself. So I stayed seated, and then they got rid of those guys out of the classroom. It seemed all official and real. And it says, okay, so for the rest of you, you'll still get an opportunity to leave, but here's what's going to happen. We have a situation on the Bering Strait with Russia, and we need some volunteers, for this. And this unit was chosen, and blah blah, which never would happen because you're fresh cuts who just finished training and stuff. But you don't know that. And me and this other guy, Ed, a black kid, same age as me from Texas. We were like the youngest guys. The other guys were like basically between their 20s, mid-20s, early 20s. And so they said at this point, if anybody wants to raise their hand and nobody's going to judge you. Long story short, everybody stepped up and went to the back and got ushered out of this place except for three of us. And I can remember all three of us. I'm thinking, wow, and said, any questions? I said, yeah, will I be able to call my mom? That was my only question. Can I talk to my mom before we go? I said, unfortunately, no, you can write a letter and we'll deliver it to her. It seems so serious, and, looking back, it's like I feel so gullible, but I mean, it was serious to me. And I was willing to go and do whatever needed to be done, what was asked of me. And it turned out to be a test. And so from that, I became like a platoon leader because I got promoted for that, for holding my mud, if you will. And got good weekend passes, like 3 weeks in a row. So, I mean, it was a test, but I mean, it showed me, you think you know yourself. You think you know yourself, but you don't really know yourself until you're put in a situation. You believe you know yourself. Pride is an interesting thing. It's a very woundful thing if you're honest with yourself. Most individuals, especially men, especially alpha males, cannot do an honest survey of themselves. It's very contradictory to any kind of arrogance, narcissism, any kind of high levels of esteem. But I am such a person. And, I've done a lot of this, especially over the last 25 years, and it's painful. But you think you know yourself. You really don't until you find yourself. Later on, when I was at San Quentin in 1986, I'd gotten into trouble. I was already with the brand at that time. I'd been around them. I was around them. I was on the AB Mexican Mafia yard in the Adjustment Center, AC at San Quentin. And I was there with Curtis Price, who's now deceased, baby Kurt, and a couple of other people. And there's 6 guys there and about 6 or 7 mobsters. And, 3 or 4 of us that are not anybody yet. We're just there because that's the yard you're on. It's either that or the scrap yard. So I'm there, and this guy says to me, he goes, yeah, well, you know what? We're having a conversation. It's very amicable at first, and he tells me finally, he goes, yeah, you know what? If we decide we're going to hit you and kill you, you're just going to stand here and take it. You're just going to die. That's what I said. I don't know who you think you're talking to, pal. I'm a soldier, and if I find out somebody's coming after me, I'm going to go get them before they get me. I don't give a who they are or what they're wearing or where they're from or who they're running with. And he got real belligerent. Said, y'all just take it. And I said, hey, you and all your brothers if they're like you, and the whole yard got quiet. You could hear a pin drop. I knew right away I was in trouble. Those things you get killed for. And so it was almost close to yard recall. And so we went in. They stripped you out, going out and coming in, and handcuffed you up. We go back in, and we get yard every other day. Well, between that yard and the next yard, so the day in between, Kurt gets at me. He's my cellie. I'm my neighbor, 2 cells down. And he gets at me and he tells me, hey, Casper, you come out to the yard. Well, so they have the brothers used to get together at the beginning of the yard and they discuss whatever they're discussing in a corner all by themselves. You were not privy to that if you were not one of them or involved in that. So you just played basketball or worked out or whatever. And then after that, you would do the machine, you'd work out and stuff like that. But so I was being invited. I wasn't being invited so much as I was being told, when you come out to the yard next day after tomorrow, you come over to the sit down area with us, and we got things to talk about. I know what time it is. I'm thinking I'm getting whacked. I'm done. And so I had convinced myself that when yard came, I just tell them, they come by and say, "Hey, you want yard?" And nobody ever says no, but I'm thinking I'm going to tell them no. I've got a year and a half to the streets. I'm not going to die here like this. This is what I'm telling myself. Like I said, you don't know who you are until you're put up against the wall. When they came to ask me if I want yard, I told them, yeah, and I started stripping out. And in my head, I'm saying, "What are you doing? You're betraying yourself. They're going to kill you. What are you doing? Stop. But I couldn't stop myself. I just couldn't stop myself. I went through the motions like on autopilot, and I went out to the yard. And I was called over. And, before I got over there, Little Tank, he's passed away now. So, he was one of the brothers indicted on the RICOs down in Orange County. He was killed in the county jail down there. But he called me over, and Mike and I, we had a good relationship. I really liked him a lot. He was about something, and that was the best thing somebody could say about a guy, was not that who you were with or what you read. The best thing when I came in the system, a guy could say about you was you were about something. And the worst thing they could say is you ain't about nothing. That guy ain't about nothing right there. That was everything. There were many regs that never got made into any organization that had the utmost respect. They were the epitome of respect, because the way they carried themselves and conducted themselves, they were about something. So long story short, Mike tells me, he goes, "I'm not doing this right now, but reach into my jacket. I got something there. You got to defend yourself." And another guy named Kelly also came over to me, and a guy named Thumper, who was on death row at the time. That's where they were at. He told me, "I got your back." And I said, "You get killed with me?" And at that time, Kurt said, "Hey, Casper, come over here." And so I moseyed on over there. I mean, it was almost like my legs were numb. And I'd say my guts were just, they were nuts. I don't care what anybody says, how hard you are, how prepared you are to die. Willfully walking to that execution is like, it leaves a coppery taste in your mouth you never forget. And so I walked over there, and I stood there, and he asked me to take a position between the fence and the wall, which is underneath the gun tower above us. So there's no gun coverage on me. My back is to the wall, so I can't get out unless going through these 6 fellas. And he says in a soft-spoken voice, and I'll tell you, Curtis Price was feared by a lot of people within the organization as well. I mean, there's terrified of him. And for no means of what happened out there with Steve Barnes, his father, So Kurt was a mean motor scooter. So Kurt tells me, "Stand over there, Casper." And my back's to the wall there. And he says in a soft voice, goes, "You want to tell me what that comment was about the other day?" And I start to talk, and this other guy, I almost said his name, this other guy, he starts piping up, and Kurt tells him, "Shut up. I'm not talking to you." He goes, "But brother," he goes, "you shut your fucking mouth right now." He goes, "Casper has the floor. This is his one chance." He says, "What?" And I told him about the conversation. And I told him I did not mean it to come out the way it did, but I stand by what I said. I told him, if all your brothers are like you and insistent that I would sit there and just take somebody whacking me when I found out ahead of time, instead of go, "You're insane. And you, anybody who thinks like you." That was my intention. That was what. And he looked over at him. He says, "Is that's the way the conversation happened?" He said, "Well, yeah, Kurt, but with some things." He goes, "No, just that's yes or no." He goes, "Yeah, it's pretty square." He goes, "All right." And I'm thinking, here it comes. He goes, "Okay, so here's what's going to happen. You're now going to be his bodyguard." Just like it was medicine meted out. I didn't like this guy. This guy didn't like me. Now I'm being assigned to be his bodyguard. I'm going to be his bodyguard. And and he goes, and that's the way it is. And another thing, you just you take orders from this crew, this family, and nobody else. And are you good with that, or did you have other plans? And I said, no, sir, I had no other plans. And then he says, okay, you can walk away now. We can finish our thing. And as I was walking in, Casper, he goes, give me that piece in your pocket. He goes, don't you ever put a piece in your pocket or carry a piece to us again when you come here. So it's like, yeah, there was nothing that was a secret. It was all testing, and it was all, it was a test, but it wasn't a test. Later that month, I had a green rag, green bandana, colors, from a motorcycle club that I was with. And, obviously the brand has green as their color, the Shamrock. And Mike, Little Tank, came over to me and said to Casper, he goes, give me your green rag. I say, bro, what is this, man? He goes, just trust me, Casper, give me your green rag. He goes, you trust me, right? I said, yeah, I trust you, Mike. He goes, give me your green rag. So I gave him my green rag, and he gave me a brand new green rag. He said, this is a different color green. The colors were identical, but the symbology of what was being done was clear. I was being brought into the fold. And he goes, don't mess this up, man. And so I still wasn't being put up. I was brought into the fold, and, I was being gifted a Shamrock green rag, a Kelly green rag, as opposed to a Forest green rag, which is still no difference than the Kelly green. But and that was really kind of my beginning right there. And went out to court, back to Soledad, for a case. I had a double staff assault on guards down there, and I had retired one. I had beat him so bad and broke him up so bad, and he came back from retirement and got some sergeant stripes, and he blew those. And the guy's come in and out of the system several times, but as a guard and then a civil servant after that. But the guy and I got along really good. I mean, we had a good rapport as far as a convict and a guard could go. And like I said, I was an F wing at Soledad. It was close custody wing, so they had a 12 o'clock unlock. So in the morning after breakfast, I'd just go into a homeboy cell. We'd either tattoo or we watch movies. I didn't have a TV at the time. And my cellie had just left for a staff assault. Went to the hole. And so I didn't have a TV. And I wanted to watch this movie with Kathleen Turner, Romancing the Stone, So he told me, hey, come on over. So I'm over there watching Romancing the Stone. 12 o'clock unlock, I tell this cop, I say, hey, man, you going to let me out? He goes, no. He goes, what are you doing over here? I said, I asked you if I could come over here. He goes, yeah, okay. So I'm down on the second tier, looking up at the third tier, which is where my cell was on the other side. The tiers face each other at Soledad and Tracy.
Hey, do you know what that sound means? Ooh, that's something I've been hearing a lot lately. I can't help but love that. That's what I hear when I make another sale on Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to start, run, and grow your business. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. The Pokemon business I've recently started with someone is absolutely thriving thanks to Shopify. Shopify accepts all kinds of payments, and sometimes it's complex when you get on a platform, but their dashboard makes it completely simple. Covering all your sales channels from a shopfront-ready POS system to its all-in-one e-commerce platform, Shopify even gets you selling across social media marketplaces like Facebook, Insta, TikTok, and YouTube. Full of the industry-leading tools ready to ignite your growth, Shopify gives you complete control over your business and your brand without learning new skills in design or coding. And thanks to award-winning help and with an extensive business course library, Shopify is ready to support your success every step of the way. So when it comes to dealing with people all over the world, Shopify is absolutely enabling us to smash it with our Pokemon business. Before Shopify, our Pokemon card business was in the dark ages. It's time to get serious about selling and get Shopify today. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Sign up for a £1 per month trial period at shopify.co.uk/Sean, SHAUN, all lowercase. Go to shopify.co.uk/Sean, SHAUN to take your business to the next level today. Shopify.co.uk/Sean. Link in description box below this video on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Back to the podcast.
But and he goes up to my cell, and he pulls my new cellie out, handcuffs him to the tier, which is illegal, especially when the tiers are crowded. Back then, it wasn't all controlled movement. Everything was wide open from the time the front bar, the bar opened up in the morning till the time they closed it at night. You had keys to your cell, even, you know. So they cuffed him. And these two guards went in there and they started tearing the cell up. And they took my bugler and tobacco and opened up and dumped it over the tier. They took my coffee and dumped it over the tier. Took my clothes and stuff, threw them over the tier. And then they took a picture of somebody close to me, and they ripped it up. And then they took a picture of my mom and dad that I had. And they broke the frame that was made. And he looked right at me, made eye contact as he ripped it. Right then, I'm in the cell with this guy, Mike, my friend. And this guy was a little hog walking as it was. He was a little stud, you know, and the guy got shot up. I had 357 from the LAPD in a shootout. I mean, he was just tore up, and the guy was just like a Timex. Took a look at him, kept on ticking. Anyway, he tells me, he goes, I know you're going to take off. He goes, I got your back. I said, you're going home in 22 days, 23 days. I said, I'm not going to do nothing. He goes, yeah, I got your back. I know you're not going to let this go, Casper. I said, I'm not going to do anything. He goes, yeah. I said, hey, look, man. I'm going home in 4 or 5 months. You're going home in 22 days. We'll wait. We'll get out there. We'll do this right. We'll take a couple of them out, you know, where they cash their checks and drink beer. He goes, all right. So that was how I talked him down. In my mind, I'm already programming how I'm going to do this in my head. And so they come down to his cell next, and they open the door, and they said cell search, and they told us to go out of the tier. Unlike my cell, they didn't cuff either one of us. We're just walking back and forth pacing, while one tears up the cell and the other one stands at the door. My friend keeps telling me, he goes, hey, I know you're going to do this. You know you're going to. I said, I'm not. I'm really not, man. Let's go do this right. Let's not fire a wad here and be strung out like cheap plastic. Let's get out there and do it right. He goes, all right. So I waited till they were done, and they locked him in the cell. I waited for the key to completely lock. And he goes, get going. I walked up there, what the fuck expect me, punk? And I just took off on him. And the other one came at me. I dotted him in the eye, and I just went back to this guy, and I just beat him. There was so much blood in the crime photos. It looked like a Manson killing or something. I mean, there was blood dripping from the ceiling, from the tops of the doors, blood that had rooster-tailed all over like 4 or 5 cells down, bloody footprints. I mean, from where the squad, when they pushed the alarm, came up and got me. They're yelling at the gunner to shoot me. Shoot him. And, you know, she wouldn't shoot me. I got a history with her down the line too later when she's a captain at Pelican Bay. But anyway, you know, she just wouldn't shoot. And so they took me down. The squad took me down. And there was this big sergeant, head of the squad, called Refrigerator because of Refrigerator Perry for the Chicago Bears at the time. And he's real soft-spoken. I said, if you're going to beat me down, I'll take my trimming and whatever. But just understand this. If you go beyond this one trimming, I'm going to start stabbing motherfuckers, guys in green, every time I can get a chance. You know, use whatever I have in my means to start assaulting your officers. He goes, nobody's going to beat you down, Casper. I'm just going to walk you over to my office. We're going to talk about what happened, take some pictures, take you to medical, and, you know, and you're going to be placed in the hole, you know, knowing. And that's exactly what happened. I kept waiting, but nothing happened. And while I was in the hole there, you know, I met Blinky Griffith there and 2 other brothers. At that time, they were trying to break up the power that they had, so they housed several of their organization's leadership in the ADSEGs of each institutions that they had at that time. There were a couple in Tracy's Hole, K-Wing, a couple in Soledad, a couple down in Palm Hall, a couple in W-Wing at Vacaville. I mean, they just had them all over the place trying to break up the influence. You know, of course, that just spreads things. You know, it's like a brush fire. But so that's where I met Blinky there. And I'm out in the yard, and he says, what's that orange red bandana for, stud? And I said, it's Orange County. He goes, you're from OC, huh? He goes, I'm from Orange County. And we start talking on the fence. He's in a yard with these other 2 guys by themselves. And I'm on this other yard, which is considered the white Southern Mexican yard. And after a couple days of yard, you know, every other day, he calls me to the fence one day. We've been talking about stories about Orange County, the way he grew up there and everything else. And he asked me, hey, do you know who I am? Of course, I knew who he was. I said, yeah, I know who you are. And he goes, so what's your philosophy? I'm like 20, 22, 23. What's my philosophy? What does that mean? A guy with a GED, you know. I got in the county jail on the way to the joint, only went to get the GED because there was free coffee and donuts at the class, So here I am now, a guy with 2 PhDs in law degree, It's like, who would have thought that then, But he said, "What's your philosophy?" And I said, "What does that even mean?" "Well, what do you mean? What's my philosophy? What's that mean?" And he says, "Oh, yeah, what's your philosophy?" I said, "About what?" And he says, "Well, what are your interests? I mean, what is your outlook on life? What is your agenda?" I said, "Well, I'm an Odinist. I believe in the old Norse gods, and that's my philosophy." He goes, "No, I mean, what's your philosophy as it pertains to prison and prison politics?" So I really don't have one, and I really don't want to have one. He goes, "You did a pretty good number on those guards." He goes, "Especially the one." He goes, "That gets people noticed. So I just want to know, do you want to be noticed?" And I told him, "No, not really." The only stories I'd heard of these guys yet was that if you don't make it with them, they use you like a torpedo, and they shit you out the other end when they use you up. And I didn't want anything to do with that, obviously, So he goes, "Well, how do you feel about this yard?" I said, "Yeah, it's all right for a concrete yard. I mean, it's better than being in a cell all by myself, I guess." He goes, "No." He goes, "How do you feel about the yard? I mean, like, if you knew there was, is it your yard? Is it? Oh, well, it's my yard as much as anybody else's." He goes, "No, what I mean is, how would you feel if you knew there was a rat on your yard? Would you want that rat on the yard? Would you be willing to walk the yard with that rat?" I said, No, I don't believe I would." He goes, "Because there's a rat on your yard." He told on all of us and turned in a bunch of knives, walked him right to the warden's office at Folsom. I go, "All right." He goes, "How does that make you feel?" "Well, it doesn't make me feel anything. But I mean, if you're asking me, will I put my work in? I'll definitely make my bones and be done with it." And you know what? Because that was basically what you did when you were reg. When you got called on, you did something once, and you were shown to be a stand-up guy, and you were about something, and you just went about your business after that, unless you had intentions to move up the ladder, which I didn't. But I knew I was going to get called on sooner or later. And so the thing with the cops was my own personal thing. It had nothing to do with them. So I said, "Yeah, what do you want me to do?" He goes, "Well, I want you to stab this guy." I said, "Okay. Where do I get the piece?" He said, "Oh, well, we'll make you the piece and we'll send it down to your cell." And I said, "How am I going to get it out past the metal detectors? They wand you and stuff like that." He goes, "Well, you know what? You stick it in the vault." I said, "Stick it in what vault?" He goes, You keister, you put it up your ass." I said, "Oh, hell no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that." I said, "I'll use it, but I'm not." He goes, "Okay." And he laughed at me. He chuckled. He goes, "Okay." He goes, "We'll get it out. You come over to the fence and we'll hand it to you and you go use it." I said, "I got no problem. That's fine." And you have to understand these guards back then, I mean, they shot to kill, and some places more so than others. They really didn't ratchet up that policy until we opened up Corcoran shoe and New Folsom and Tehachapi Max and then Corcoran shoe. But I mean, they really poured it on there, I'll tell you. But so I figured, okay, I hit this guy a couple times and be done before they throw down on me. So the guy, they don't tell me that they already had somebody else trying to get next to him, so he knows it's coming. And what he did with the last guy was he conned him into standing down. So that's what he did. And so he stayed on the yard, feeling safe. So he tells me, he goes, "Hey, when I got off, what did they do? They want you to hit me, right?" "Oh, dude, what are you doing? What are you talking about, stud? Get off me, We're just talking about Orange County, So between the next yard and the yard I'm going to hit this guy, he gets all these northern Mexicans on the tier that we're on, and everybody else starts lighting bed sheets and, starts fires and starts, little ruckus up there on the tier. The guards have to come up with the fire extinguishers and the hoses and put it out. And I'm the only guy who's got my sheets in my cell still. And yet I'm the guy who gets beefed for inciting a riot and burning my sheets and stuff, which they charged me for. But I got my sheets. My pillowcase. I mean, they only give you what they give you. I got everything. But it was all the big setup because he was their rat, And they put me down in a seg cell all by myself for 10 days. But when I got to go to the shower, I could see out on the yard. And, Blinky and those other guys, they got yard every day, not every other day. So they had privileges because of who they were, So I yelled out the window, "Hey, man, That guy got off before I get off. He goes, yeah, don't worry about it. Your heart was in the right place. And I said, well, you know what? When we get back out there, I'll make haste with it. I'll do it right away as soon as he gets out. He goes, you're not going back to that yard, stud? I go, I'm not. He goes, you're coming to this yard when they release you. They're not going to let you back out there now. I said, all right. So sure enough, he was right. I went out to that yard with him and the other two guys. And so it was just the four of us on that yard. And this was really my first beginning of indoctrination to anything to do with the Aryan Brotherhood. And, this is how it began for me. And that's it. I mean, that's just the way it started for me. It was just that simple and that matter of fact.
How old were you at that point, Casper?
That was in 1986, so I think I was about to turn 24. Yeah.
How did it progress from there?
Okay, so when you went to committee from the whole, they'd ask you if you want to go to Folsom SHU or San Quentin SHU, and I went. I said, when I was in there, I said I don't care which one, and so they put me up for San Quentin SHU and Folsom as a backup. These are places where they're thick. They own the house, and they're all in the SHU. This is about the time that they started gathering people up off the lines with indeterminate SHU programs. 1986, they had gotten a special order from the governor's office and the courts to lock these guys up, indeterminately. So they had other privileges that everybody else didn't have because they were not there for violating any crimes or rules. They were just gang members by the state's identity. So that's how that happened. So that's why there were all these different holes around the state, these different ADSEGs. But I told them I didn't care, whichever one. So they said, okay, you should have tried to tell them Folsom first. You'd have been better off there. San Quentin's good. And they gave me a list of names of people to look for. Unbeknownst to me at that time, those are codes. When you go up asking the guy who's got the keys to the yard when you get to the SHU, which are brothers, there's 4 or 5 brothers up there in the hole, and you're introduced to an envoy betwixt them, and then you meet with one of them off to the side, and they want to know, did you bring any kites? What's up? Any messages? And so I did bring kites. I brought 3 kites for him. In the keister, and I spit off the names that I was told to ask. Unbeknownst to me, I mean, those things go good or bad. Those names determine that you're a good guy or you're somebody that needs to get hit. You bring your own death warrant with you if you're one of those guys that's in trouble, or you do what I did. You give them the names, and everything's good. And I'll never forget one of the guys there. One of the names was a guy named Gino, and he was from Long Beach, and he was the only other guy with a shaved head in the system at that time that I knew of. I shaved my head as far back as that, and people didn't shave their heads back then. They all had big mustaches and had their hair slicked back. And, Gino had a shaved head with a tattoo on the side of it of a 54 Chevy or Ford. I don't remember what it was, but, he was one of the names. And he was real close from childhood with one of the other guys that was on the yard, Ed. I won't say his last name because he's still alive. But he was Blinky's right hand for years and years and years, all the way up till the time Blinky died. And so once that message was received, they had their little council. A couple yards later, they pulled me over, and they asked me where my heart was at. I said, yeah, you know what time it is? I mean, I ain't looking to be used up, but I'm definitely looking to, put my work in and just get it done and over with. And so there was a guy named Jim, Big Jim. He was one of them. And he was in K-Wing, the hole at Tracy, and he was getting ready to parole. So there was a guy who hit the yard who was in the hat, meaning marked for death. And Jim made sure nothing happened to him on the yard so he could go home, so he could get out at his parole date. The guy would have got hit. There'd been investigation, he got blamed. Very least they could extend your time by a year at that time, through board parole hearings, if you were on a violation, that is. And so he went home, didn't think anything of it. Now here he is in, San Quentin in North Block, in the hole. And he's thinking everything's good. And, he comes off the handball court and, me and this other guy, we hit him, And the gunner was looking right at us. And, when they put the yard down, they called the one guy, and I'm waiting for him to call me, but they don't call me at all. They call another guy. And so they go out, and I'm just waiting, but nothing. They do yard recall. One by one, we come up and they cuff us up, and the other shoe never hits the ground. I mean, I'm clean, But the guy ended up ratting, but he wasn't found credible, the other guy. So anyway, long story short, so I'm there in North Block after this, and I'm good. I'm all good now. I've got all the fellas shooting me books to read, and they sent me a TV, and I'm somebody now. And they sent me Canteen. I'm coming up from doing the right thing, and they sent me down a book. Goes, yeah, you reading down there? I said, no, I just finished a Louis L'Amour book. Well, I'll shoot you something down to read. I said, all right.
Can you explain for people who are not familiar with Louis? Can you explain the significance? Louis
L'Amour is, he's a cowboy writer, an author of American cowboy novels, and he wrote a book called "Writing for the Brand." I didn't know any of this back then. I mean, I think the one that I just read was the Alkali Flats or something like that, but or maybe one of the Sackett novels, but Louis L'Amour wrote "Writing for the Brand," which is where the term brand comes from. The brand was the brand that you branded your cattle with and whatnot. And you rode loyally to the brand of the rancher, as one of his regulators or what have you. Well, the brand for the Aryan Brotherhood became the Shamrock, and became the brand itself was like a second incarnation from the original Aryan Brotherhood, which itself was an incarnation from the Bluebirds and the Diamond Tooth Gang and all that kind of stuff as it, became necessary for things. The brand starts the era of racketeering, of getting their monies, while all these other organizations had already been making money in the drug trades and whatever and gambling. And, so now they were stepping up and going to own their piece of the pie, which ended up being a good majority piece. But so anyway, I was reading a Louis L'Amour book, and I just finished. So I said, I'll take something. What do you got down there? He goes, I'm going to shoot your book. And when you get done with it, I want you to write a report. I said, write a report? This is my first, to this. And so he shoots me down a book, and it's opened up. And, to get it under the chin, it's in pieces. It's because it's a thick book. And so it's broke down into pieces to get under the fishing line and get it under the door. And so I put it all together. And it's got little notes on it to which way it goes together. So I put it together, and I look at it, and I says, Beyond Good and Evil. Well, what's this? I said, what's this? Who's this Nietzsche character? I said, it's Nietzsche, Nietzsche, and we want you to read it. And, I said, okay. So, I'm reading this, and I got a dictionary with me, and I can't make heads or tails of any of this shit. It's just like, might as well be Chinese arithmetic for me, And so I don't want to be an idiot, so I waited for about 4 or 5 days, and then I send the book back. I got that book back for it. He goes, you read this? I go, yeah. He goes, you read the whole thing, Casper? You couldn't have read the whole thing that quick, bro. I've read that book twice. You didn't read that whole book. I said, I've read it before. Just dig, keep digging. You're going to hold, keep digging. And so I get a kite back from Little Tank, and he says, hey, look, I know you haven't read this book before. I know it's difficult. It's important that you read this book. Let me tell you, what happens with where you go for the rest of your life from this day forth depends on how intelligent you are, how intelligent you're perceived, what you have to contribute. Brawn is great. Will to use force is great. But intellectual faculties are what is king here. You need to be able to read this, digest this, and show that you got something to contribute. I didn't understand all that back then, but I mean, I would learn real quick, and I started soaking the stuff up like a sponge. They had free college with Pell Grants and Cal Grants back then from Cal Berkeley and UC San Francisco, and I think Mount Thomas Paul or some little college out there. But so I got involved with Philosophy 101. You know, Nietzsche would become my favorite. You know, Aristotle second to that. So I've read everything Nietzsche's ever written, at least twice, and many things probably up to 10 times. You know, I'm going to quote you a lot of it forward and backward. But at that time, I didn't know anything about this, and I didn't know what this would start for me. I loved that it would start for me, but I did my report, and I had to do that like 4 times. No, redo it, do this. And, the whole purpose of this was an indoctrination. Then the next thing I got was a Gray's Anatomy. I was told to study the Gray's Anatomy, and then I had to do a test on where the most lethal spots were. And I failed that because I'm stabbing at the heart. And obviously the most lethal ways is to bleed somebody out, under the armpit or in the groin, or, so I learned all those lessons along the way. And then there was other things, Sun Tzu's Art of War, Machiavelli's Prince, and also The Art of War. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. There's a whole plethora of these things. There's a corpus of all these timeless. There's the War of the Flea, which is on guerrilla warfare. In fact, I had a hard copy of that book that had been passed around by so many people. It had all the brothers that had it at one point with their little shamrocks and their signatures and names on it. And I had sent that home when they tried to take it as a hardcover. Your choice was, you donate, you send it home, or you take the covers off. And then you couldn't have the book anyhow because it was contraband. So what I did was I sent it home, and I don't know what happened to it. That was, the woman I was with at the time, she pretty much got rid of all my stuff. But so that was my indoctrination right there. It's twofold, and then it becomes threefold. The first twofold is the fraternity and the camaraderie, being felt that you matter, that you're about something. Contrary to what all these guys say, I'm not gonna fat mouth anybody, but a lot of guys talking about how I had no choice. They approached me. That's a lie. That's a lie. When I came into the system, there were so many guys with shamrocks in their eyes trying to become somebody. There was no shortage of people willing to make a move. It wasn't like later in the years, like in the 90s, where you practically had to threaten somebody to go make a move. That's how bad it had gotten. There was no shortage of people trying to make their bones, trying to get noticed, trying to get put up, So the thought that they come at you and they recruit you and you have no choice, that's just a bunch of bullshit. I mean, you try hard to get noticed and to become somebody, and not everybody's worthy. And I don't mean just that. I mean, even the people that get that rock, and there's a lot of them that are not worthy. And to them, that rock makes them somebody, not they make it something. And there's some odious characters that just, they eat their own. That's further on down the line. So first there's the fraternity, and you feel like you've arrived. You're somebody. The guards start treating you differently. Other people start treating you differently. Commanders and generals of other organized crime families and gangs, whatever you want to call them, they start treating you differently. All of a sudden, you're somebody who commands respect, and it's a powerful intoxicant. And the further up the ladder you get, the further up the food chain, you start feeling divine, like a god. And it's just, it's a very overwhelming lure, and it's hard to walk away from that opportunity, though it's really no opportunity at all in hindsight. But it surely was for me. I was a nobody in my life. I wasn't a good athlete. I didn't have a lot of friends. The only friends I had were the misfits who were on their way to youth authority and whatnot, which was a rare thing from where I come from. So I grew up a nobody and a small, slight kid who had to battle all the time until I got good at what I was, able to use my hands and fisticuffs. And I never mattered anywhere, and this right here was an opportunity to matter. Um, I had some things where I mattered a little bit to other people, but I wasn't of their bloodline, so I was never going to be one of them per se. Uh, so this was like my first opportunity. I mean, I mattered, and I felt like I mattered, and so that's the first prong. The second prong is the education and indoctrination, and you get that in increments depending on how far they're willing to let you in or go, or where you're going to go with that, and so that's the twofold. The third fold is the practical application thereof, that knowledge, applying it, applying those skills. One of the first things I got command of a yard. It's, you think you're running the yard and they're there, but you're running the yard. It's your yard. What you say goes, well, it's another test. If you make bad mistakes, you'll pay for them. Nobody else. If you mess up a little bit and you're liked and they're still looking at you, they'll shore you up and give you guidance on what to do and where you went wrong. That was the case for me a couple of times. But what they want to do is they want to see how you put things together. This guy's got to go over there. You get a couple guys to do this, and So the first one I had to line up. I created a scenario with a diversion. So the diversion would take place over here. You got to remember, these are small yards with gunners around them, like a fishbowl to shoot in, and it's indiscriminate. And so what happens is you have this diversion that I create over here, and while that's happening, these other guys go after this mark over here, the target. It's like you consider the perch where the weapon is that's lethal. You consider the fall where the victim must fall, and you consider your shooters and their safety, and going over here, and you're going to be graded by people that are running the show on how this goes down. And so I did really good, apparently, and that made me feel good. And with every success, the failures that come along with it don't feel so much like failures, because you got all these successes as you're going along. They become, like Oscar Wilde says, experiences. That's what our failures are, experiences. So that was my beginning right there.
Casper, can I just stop you one moment? So for the average person that doesn't understand prison terminology, could you just explain what the responsibilities are for running a yard?
Well, when you get a yard, you're given the keys to a yard. Now, it's a little different now because when you get to the keys to a yard, whether it's a general population or an ADSEG yard, before Ashker v. Brown let everybody out of the hole, or most everybody out of the hole, everybody was in the shoe. So they had guys that come through the hole that had been in their cell, their cellies or whatever. Like, say a guy was with his brother and he was considered a stand-up guy. They would give him the keys to the yard that he went back out to run the general population. Or if he was just going back to regular ADSEG, they'd give him the keys to that. That's a whole different thing. This was back in the day when everybody's still in the yards, in the hole. The brand is running the yards. They're on the yard. There's 4 or 5 brothers on a yard. And they give you the keys, but you really don't have the keys. What it is you have control of the decisions that have to be meted out on the yard. People have a problem, they come to you. Something has to be done. They tell you this has to be done. Make it happen. Make it so. Make it happen the next yard. That's your responsibility to do that. That's what running the yard was back then. Running a yard today is something completely different. And even now, even different beyond that now, because they're all out on the line again. But that's what that meant at the time.
And to get into that position, to be running a yard, how much work would someone have to put in to get there?
Well, I mean, you're going to put in at least a couple of moves. You're going to put a couple of hits in, and on top of that, you're going to do some other things. You're going to bring weapons to the yard. You're going to facilitate other people to bring stuff in, drugs, or you're going to help them figure out how they have to do something. You gotta show up, to be recognized and when they put you there, one or two things is happening. You look back in hindsight, and you see this. So when you get a yard back then in the 80s, on their yard, they're either A, grooming you for further advancement and to see if they're going to put you up or if you're worth keeping around, or you're being lulled to sleep, what they call rocking the baby to sleep, you know. And so you're going to bring your own piece out to your own execution. You're going to hand it to two other guys, to one guy and another guy's guy, and then after you do, they're going to kill you. You know, I mean, that's the way that works. It's good. You disarm a guy by thinking he's still part of the program. He's running something, and if you know you haven't done anything wrong, and you know you're doing things right, and you're seeking guidance along the way, so you don't step in a pile of shit. You don't have anything to worry about. I didn't have anything to, and so I'd gotten a talking to for that, and but I handled it well. You know, I mean, I handled discipline well. I didn't take it as an affront. One of the first things I learned, people talk about things today. I mean, make no mistake about it. The brand today is very deadly. They kill people, and for a lot less reasons. Back then you didn't whack a guy unless he really had it coming. I mean, very few personal things unfolded. Just this guy wants this guy whacked, and so he's getting whacked. That's just whites didn't treat white men like that. There, it was a different game. We had real enemies of other races that we had. You had to have cohesion. So hits on your own were for reasons of somebody ratting, somebody being greedy, and not taking heed to advice to correct their behavior, or somebody had done something so odious they just had to go and be made an example of. Short of that, you needed soldiers, you needed people. When I was involved at my highest point, I don't think there was ever more than probably 75 brothers in the whole United States of America at that time. In the feds, the state. We're not talking about other states like Arizona, which is not considered, or back then the only states that were considered was California and Texas, and then the feds. And and then Texas went its own way with this thing too. But the whole point of that was, and the way you got noticed was they took Polaroid pictures on the yard, and your picture went around everywhere. Copies were made by somebody's old lady or a runner, and they went into every brother in the feds. They went into every brother in the state of California where that, and it had to be a unanimous vote, and then it went to a vote of 3, and then it went to a few guys just having the juice to say, hey, this is my brother now. He's our brother, and get with the program. Or so it's changed so much, but you needed all your soldiers. Back then, like I said, you had like maybe coast to coast in the feds in the state, you had maybe like 70, 75 guys. And so you had literally thousands, tens of thousands of soldiers that wanted to be a brother, or they at least wanted to be on the good side of a brother and use that credibility as their credential to do things when they got out, open up shop, as it were. So,
Casper, let's say you're running a yard and 2 white boys have got a beef. How would you adjudicate that?
Okay, well, back then, that was just a totally unacceptable thing. If it was something that could not be meted out, the brand would just tell you straight up, you're just going to fucking learn to live with each other. You stay away from him. You stay away from him. You go hang out with these guys in this part of this crew. You do this. And they just issued the order. That's up. If you didn't abide by that, well, then you got removed. It was, you were dispatched. It was that simple.
What were the biggest challenges for you for running a yard?
So when we were at New Folsom, we had just opened up New Folsom, and Art Rufo had just been shot, and the retaliation for that was a guard named Pitts being shot on his way home from work. So we're out in the yards, and a brother who I was celled up with at the time, Bobby Wayne, he's now gone. He was another guy who was highly respected and feared. A very square kind of guy for somebody involved. It was very lethal, very machine-like. And I took a lot of my cues from him. I respected the hell out of him. So he gave me the yard. And one of the first things was that there was a guy who was a homeboy of mine at that. This is the hard stuff right here, when it's people you have from home that another guy from Orange County. And we'd cut up the lights and made them into pieces. and had shamrocks on them, and we distributed them to people to hold on to, and to that meant you kept them up in you. You took them everywhere until they were called upon for use. You didn't, and I told these 2 guys, I said, you don't have to do this, but if you do say you're going to do it, you have to do it the right way. Oh, no, we want to do it. We'll do it. I said, you cannot put these in a mattress. You cannot put these on a string in the toilet. You must keep these on your person, in your person. Do you understand? Do you understand what will happen if you fail? Yeah, no problem. We got this. Just send us a couple down. So there was no couple about it. I sent them 1 down, and they did one of these guys who was a brother. He locked up during yard, and he'd given up where had like 7 of these knives in the back of his TV. They took his TV, they found him, and while he was on his way to PC, he had told them where the other ones were and what they were about, who had them. And so they came and they hit all of our cells. And this is in the shoe at CSP SAC, which is called New Folsom. And what happened was they came and they found some of the pieces, but they didn't find all of them. But they went into this cell where these other guys that I gave the 1 to, they had put it in the toilet and they flushed it. These toilets back in the day, they'd take anything down, just sheet, a blanket. These things were just, monstrous commodes. But so we went out to the yard and I asked him for the piece. I said, I just send that back to me. We lost some of those, so I need that back because we don't have it. I said, what do you mean you don't have it? I said, yeah, we flushed it. So I said, he goes, man, we're really sorry. It's all right. It happens. You got to start rocking the baby to sleep right here instantly. That's the first thing you got to do. You can't give up any hint of any kind of problem. Yeah, don't worry about it all. I'll talk to the fellas and, I'll smooth this out. And there's 4 brothers there. And, one of them's really high ranking. Another one's pretty up the ladder. And they get at me. They're in another section. Only Bobby's with me. And Bobby's about to leave. And so that's a whole nother story. But anyway, so they get at me and they tell me, hey, what are you going to do with that guy? I said, what do you want me to do? I said, no, you make the decision. What needs to be done. So it's on you for will or woe. You make the decision. It's yours to own. I could have found a way to do something that would have been acceptable, but I didn't want to be seen weak. Back then, if you were a weak branch, you got cold from the tree of life, as it were. I did not want to be perceived as weak. I didn't want to disrupt my ascension. So the next yard, I had the guy hit, and it was just that simple, And obviously, I'd made the right decision, and. So now I'm moving up the ladder, and we end up opening up Corcoran shoe, brand new. I'm like one of the first 20 guys in there. They pull the buses right up to the blocks. They take us over to R&R and they x-ray us for weapons and our rectums and everything. And I'm in 4B2 left. And it's all of us, and this is where the infamous Gladiator fights start, I got to tell you, from a convict's perspective, this was not necessarily a terrible thing. We had enemies that for years you couldn't get at them, and there's matters of disrespect. You're looking for a chance to get some and polish your luster, polish the rock, as they say. You're looking for your opportunity. So nobody was really terrible about that, and everybody wanted theirs except for a coward. And then when they started shooting and killing people, that was a little different story. You're thinking, okay, but to be honest with you, they weren't shooting anybody that was white. They weren't shooting anybody that was from the brand or anybody associated or affiliated with that because of what happened with Pitts on his way home after Rufo got shot. So they'd shoot whoever else was involved in the engagement with you. But I'll tell you, they were shooting Mexicans left and right from the north and the south, from the MA and the NF. And not so much the MA, but the Sereno Soldados and stuff like that. And, it was crazy there for a minute.
Let me just clarify for the viewers here to expand on that, because some people might be lost. The independent newspaper here in the UK, people can Google this, reported when this was happening, because it got investigated by the feds, that the guards had formed their own gang at Corcoran prison. The guards were selecting inmates to have gladiator fights to the death, and inmates that refused, some were just shot dead. Not only that, they would bring out the staff members to watch these fights. Bets would be placed, and the incidence of so many inmates dying just went up so high that it stood out, and that's what brought the feds in. And one person was in the witness stand at court who was a staff member, and he showed up in a bulletproof vest, and the judge said to him, "What are you doing?" And he said that the guards gang had done a drive-by on his house. And this is, people just can't even think this is real, because it sounds so far-fetched. But I urge people, just Google Corcoran Prison Gladiator Games. They had the ambulances ready, the medical reports written up before these people even died. But when let's go over this a bit more slowly, Casper, because I think it's fascinating. When did you become aware that the Gladiator Games were in progress?
Okay, so when we first got our yard, we went to committee like about 2 weeks after we got there. So we didn't get any yard for 2 weeks. And after committee, we got yard, and you're assigned to a yard. It's the active yard or the non-active yard. The non-active yard is for all the people that have been hit and survived, the scraps, PC. So obviously you're going to the active yard. So on the active yard, you have Aryan Brotherhood, Black Guerrilla Family, and the Western Familia, and Crips, Bloods, people just do not get along. And so the very first time I got out, my cellie got out first. So it's like when we first started, there's 2 men in a cell. So my cellie got to go to the yard before I did. So, and he got into it right from the gate. You're expected to, what's happening. So that's the end of that cell's recreation for 10 days. Even though I didn't do anything, I didn't get anything out of that, So, but I didn't get yard either. So then they do that with the next cell, and after about a month of that, they stopped that. And what it was, whoever was involved would lose their yard for 10 days, and they wouldn't even write paperwork at first, or if they did, it was very benign. And then the next time the door opened, he couldn't go to the cell to the yard, but I got to go to the yard. And so that's the way it went out. I had 3 of these fights, all with the Western Familia members. One of them very memorable. I believe he's passed recently, so I can say his name. His name was Corny. He was a general in the NF. And, we did what we had to do. And while we're lying down after they threw down on us, he said, con respectos, Casper. I said, también, Corny. He told me much respect, with respect. And I told him, and with you as well. It was everything was just so professional, and so, the guy was, he was a man who warranted respect, and it just, we did what we had to do. The previous 2 guys were both younger members and more newer members, and Corny had been around for a long time. One's name was Gangster, and he ran. We got into it a little bit, then he ran from me, and he ran around a couple of BGF members, one who was actually at the time the head of the BGF, and the other one, two of his lieutenants were by there, and they said, "What are you doing? Get away from us!" And they kept a shot or 2 at the wall, and everybody went down, and that was the end of that. And he got handled by his own people for that, obviously. And then the other one was with another guy, Lucky, and we slung it for a minute, and they let us go. And there was people up there watching from the highway patrol, and other people in suits and stuff, and they let that go for a minute, and then they pulled out the 37 or 38 millimeter, which is like a block gun, and they fired that, and that was the end of that. But they didn't shoot anybody, with any live ammunition. And so the only one that I had any paper on that they actually issued a report with was on me and Corny. And I think they were highly disappointed that we did what we had to do. And then when they got at us, we both slowly just backed up and laid down. It was like, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? It's like, and it took away their thrill, and they certainly weren't going to make issues with him, being who he was. And they didn't make issues with me because I was in the fold, and this is where I get made, is at Corcoran at this time, in 1989. So,
Casper, were they hand-to-hand fights, or did people have weapons?
Okay, so I know a lot of people that are going to watch this from different organizations are they're gonna just cringe at this, but I'm going to call a spade down the line, whether it's us, them, anybody else. They would never let anybody from the whites out first. They never let anybody from the Aryan Brotherhood out on the yards first because we'd bring a piece out and we'd use it. They didn't want to have to explain that to the feds if anything ever came down, or to the supervisor of the institution itself. So they'd always put out whoever they were going to pit us against, and then they'd put us out secondary. So like Myceli went out there, and Wolf went out there one time, and there's like these little chessboards painted on the concrete right there, right outside the door where you come out of the vestibule. And they didn't even make it to the chessboards, and there's like two guys on them, and he's just going. And Wolf was a mean motor scooter, man. He, Howard was he was good with his feet, and he was built like I am now, but back then. And he had long hair and this big, huge, long silver and red Yosemite Sam mustache, and he was nobody to f with. And he laid both these guys out. Quick. And they started ramping this stuff up, and you'd hear when you'd go to the law library, you'd get to, it was like what we call shoe visiting. It became more so in Pelican Bay, where things got more restricted. The shoes, they got tighter and tighter and more control. So you had less ability to communicate with people. Obviously never was able to stop that completely, but there was more and more restrictive chokeholds they had in place, stopgaps, if you will, to keep people from freely communicating in certain ways, either through the mail, through attorneys, or through the pipeline in the prison. So the law libraries were like the last holdout. They had to give you access to the law library. So, and then they even eventually at Pelican Bay, they stopped even doing that. You couldn't go to the law library with anybody that wasn't in your section and stuff like that. So people think of Salinas Valley and the Green Wall from the trials with those cops there, the Green Wall staff gang that they call themselves. But actually the Green Wall had formed way before that at New Folsom. When they opened that up from Old Folsom, these guards that came over, they called themselves the Black Glove Gang because of putting on the black gloves to tune a guy up, while they're escorting him or whatever. I certainly was the recipient of that, and I got the dog beat out of me by them like 7 times in a month when we came from San Quentin to New Folsom. They were breaking people. They were intent on breaking me. We get to those stories. That's just some crude, rude that you just can't believe would happen right here in America, in California. In a state where you grew up, right in the prison system. They had beat me so good, and they'd shock me with stun guns, shoot me while I'm trying to get out of the bed in the middle of the night. I'd wake up hog chain, like hog-tied with chains and shackles out on the concrete yard, and stripped naked, and have female guards out there stripped down into their bras and their Class A pants, and taking pop shots at my testicles, and with their PR-24 nightsticks. They're trying to break you, and they're laughing and talking about, oh, look at that little thing. That wouldn't satisfy you. It's all, psyops, in conjunction and concert with physical abuse, and they broke a lot of people that way at New Folsom, and obviously everybody was trying to go to Tehachapi Max when those 2 new joints opened up, not New Folsom, but I ended up there with the one guy who ended up giving up the knives, who I was a bodyguard for. I ended up there with him, he and I, and then 2 mobsters, they assembled a gauntlet when the bus hit the yard there. And the rest of these guys that were on there were just regular guys doing shoe terms of, 2 or 3 years or whatever. And they wanted to make an example. And this sergeant, his name was, what was his name? Little guy. He was real notorious himself. He ended up going to prison for stuff from Pelican Bay. But Anyway, he got on the bus and he yelled at everybody. He says, "Hey, there's 4 guys on this bus that are somebody. The rest of you are nobody. And if you want to be somebody, this is what your reward's going to be." And then they pulled us off one by one, starting with the 2 Mexicans. And they had a gauntlet assembled out there, about 20 guards with helmets and shields and everything. And, you're cuffed up, and they just beat the dog out of us through that gauntlet one at a time while all these guys on the bus are watching. And then they drug us off to the hole, and they beat us some more in the vestibules and on the yards before they threw us in the cell. And, it was rude. And, but, and they broke a lot of guys. A lot of guys ended up just saying, that's where they tapped out. And so now we're jumping all over the place here and all this, but it's like,
let me take you back again, Casper, then. How long did the Corcoran Gladiator games last for? How did it come to an end?
Okay, so I got there December of 88 or January of 89. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but I was one of the first guys there. The only thing they'd filled up so far was in 4B was 4B1 left and right. Each one is its own side. And then I was in 4B2 left. So they had filled up 4B2 right. So it was 4B1 left, 4B1 right, 4B2 right. And now we were going into 4B2 left. That's where we were at. And so I was there until everybody went up to Pelican Bay. Everybody went up to Pelican Bay like that December of 89. It just opened up. I was getting ready to parole April 1st of 1990. So me and this mobster were the only 2 guys that were affiliated that stayed behind because we were both paroling within 6 months. So I stayed behind. And at that point, the fights were done. I mean, they were just, they were pretty much, and then they started up again about a year later, with all these guys that were non-affiliated, that were just regular Serenos and regular Woods and people that had to be accountable for the way they conducted themselves. And that's when the investigations with the feds started. I think that what they did was they inserted a couple of feds into the actual system as prison guards. And that's where it started right there. But
did you hear about Rudy the Booty Bandit that was active at that time?
I'm very familiar with that. I think the guy he got was Michael Caldwell, wasn't it? Or Caldwell? It was his last name.
I can't remember the exact name.
A young black kid who was he was a kid who was I don't think he was BGF, but he was well liked by them and under the wing of them. And the guards didn't like him, and he was mouthy with the guards. And they meant to break him, and they deliberately put him in the cell with the Booty Bandit. He was repeatedly raped. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
So was Rudy how did he get away with that? Like, because of that kind of offense? Wouldn't someone try and, take him out for doing that?
Well, you have to realize at this time now, so understand this, at this time, when we first opened that place up, they put us all in the yard together. It made good fights. It made for good, action, hits that couldn't be done now could be done, that'd been on hold for a while. That's how it went until everybody went to Pelican Bay. After that, even before that, let me back up. Even before that, about 4 months before everybody went to Pelican Bay, what they did was they started separating us. So there's 3 sections in each block. So I'm in 4B2 left. So you have an A section, a B section, and a C section. Okay? So they made B section all the enemies of the brand and the MA. So the Nuestra Familia, the Crips, they were all there. Now the Bloods are recruited from the BGF. So on our yards, in the A and C section, you had the Aryan Brotherhood, the Mexican Mafia, the BGF, and the Bloods. That's what was on our yard. And you'd have the sporadic guy who was no good with the NF, who was a defector from them, but whatever. He was thrown on the yard with us as well because he was out bad with them, and he was safe there. And he'd already been vetted as a sleeper by committees and stuff like that. I remember this guy Dreamer was such a person. But so that's how that worked. And so even further, they had certain segregations within those sections of who got to go to the yard, who didn't. In other words, they had like walk-alone yards. So you get yard every other day. So on the day that you don't get yard, which is a shower day, somebody else is getting those yards, which are like walk-alone yards or groups of like just 4 or 5 guys that can't walk the yards with other people and stuff. And that's how the Booty Bandit was able to not be got at and stuff like that. Certainly if you'd have put somebody in there who was, an active member of any of the organizations or anybody who was in good standing with them that was actually put work in, knowing they're going where they're going, they're going to have a piece ready to go, and they're going to get down as soon as they get in there, as soon as the cuffs come off, But in that kid's defense, too, I believe what happened was, when they put you in a cell at Corcoran, they don't cuff up the other guy. They make him go down to the back of the cell, face the little concrete block, get on his knees and put his hands behind his head and cross his legs. And so the guy going in the cell is handcuffed. So if you're in a bad way, before those cuffs even come off, you're screwed. And they really couldn't shoot into those cells. I mean, they could to an extent, but I mean, it's at a weird. You'd have to be right in the door for them to get a shot. If you go to the back of the cell, they're not hitting you back there. You drag somebody onto one of those concrete bunks, they're not hitting you back there, and they're not going to open that door while you're taking care of your business. Attached Max, the cells were at an angle, so they couldn't even shoot in those cells at all. And they had a policy there that 0 staff would be assaulted or placed in harm's way there. So if you and your cellie were getting down and you were having a good old knife fight, they just yell at you to stop, stop, stop. They weren't opening that door until you were both cuffed up or one of you was dead and the other one was cuffing up. That's all there was to it. Believe me, I've seen it. Seen it up close and personal. So, so they got different policies, different places. But when they put that kid in there the first time, they didn't even take the cuffs off him. They just walked away from the door. So that's my understanding, is that he didn't even have a fighting chance.
Brutal.
So that's just ruthless. What's funny is I'm going to tell you something, Sean. I'm a firm believer of the Beretta crimes show storyline. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time. You get pinched, you take it like a man. You get a trimming, you take it like a man, and you stand up and be a stand-up guy and be about something, And the friends you make and the friends you have, they got your back, But at least we're honest about it, I mean, I'm away from that now. I have nothing to do with that. I want nothing to do with that ever again. But at least we were honest about it. Like Bob Dylan said, it takes an honest man to live outside the law. You wear your gun outside your belt for the honest people to see and just pass by in peace, and they'll go in peace. But anybody else, you want to step to me, hey, it's a good old-fashioned gunfight or knife fight, if you will. But the bottom line is these guards or any corrupt cop, I got nothing but respect for a cop who's not on the take. He's out there protecting society. He's protecting your wife and mine or any family members that pick up the phone and call for their services. But anybody who's dirty, even a little bit, I don't give a who you think you are. You're a corrupt piece of shit like any. You're even worse than any gangster. At least we were honest enough to be. You're out there living a fantasy and using the badge to hide behind, to exercise that fantasy, and then on top of that, come up and make some ends off of it. That's the worst kind of piece in the world right there. And for somebody to take a kid, no matter what they feel about him, and to handcuff him and walk him over to a fucking known jailhouse rapist cell and throw him in there, you're a piece of crap. Now, if you do that with a baby or something like that, by all means, have at it. Let them get what they got coming. But short of that, that's just dirty shit. All these guys, by the way, Sean, when the court cases started coming out on all these guys over the Booty Bandit thing, over the Gladiator fights, over the Green Wall, over all of this stuff, I'll tell you, these guys were flipping on their own like it was nothing, way quicker than a gangster would, So not that they don't do it too, but I'm just saying these guys jump ship like fucking rats on a sinking vessel. You know what I mean? They couldn't wait to tell on each other.
So up to this point in the story then, Casper, had you seen convict justice doled out to sex offenders, rapists?
Absolutely. I've been a part of it. And I'm not that guy today, but I still don't have any mercy for those kind of people. And I was involved with at least 4 or 5 different incidents like that, and unabashedly and unapologetically so. I mean, they're the scum of the earth. And, there's no fixing it. People, they got all these programs, these touchy-feely things. It makes me sick that they got websites dedicated to women who love these pieces of crap. These pieces of ruin some little kid's life. And if it's a male kid, usually 9 out of 10 of them grow up to just to have it reoccur in their lives as an offender. If it's a female, I mean, her life is carrying around those things forever. Any man that ever wants to love her, this baggage that she's carrying, family members, everybody's ruined by this, and these people get a slap on the fucking hand. Maybe it's a little more difficult now, but they're a sickening lot. And for most of the rapists, it's not a sexual thing at all. It's a power and control thing. After being dominated by women in their life or what have you, whatever the psychological, psychology 101 and 201, courses will teach you. The bottom line is these are people that are broken. They can't be fixed. No matter how many chances you give them, they're just going to be dormant until the next episode. I always said if a Chester, a child molester, got caught and convicted for one thing, he's gotten away with probably 20 or 30 others. So if somebody's got paperwork that's legitimate, and believe me, there's bogus paperwork that goes around, but usually in things like this, it's not. And, that's justice.
Casper, are there any of those stories you're able to talk about? Perhaps not that you participated in, but just that you were aware of what happened to those people, those chomos?
Yeah, I mean, tell you one more recent, in the last 10 years, just, I was at SADF, I'm on SNY yard because I'm a dropout, I'm a defector, First of all, let me explain that real quick if I could. SNY yards are not PC. They're SNY yards. PC is protective housing unit or protective custody. And there's a big misnomer and people think, oh, you're a rat, you're a piece of shit, you're this and that. all the things they would never say to your face in your presence, where even at 62, I would just break their jaw and their nose and everything else, But the whole thing is there's a big misnomer about that. D yard at SADF, which is Corcoran 2, in 2001 to 2003, was more violent and with more murders than any active yard anywhere in the Department of Correction. And that's real right there. And easy to substantiate through prison public records. I mean, I was there for almost 20 years. And there was at least 8 murders while I was there, and probably 30 stabbings and slicings, numerous staff assaults. It was definitely, I watched a friend of mine get life flighted off the yard after they stabbed him in the heart. 3 guys moved on him, and he lived. We thought he was dead. But anyway, and there was another friend of mine who, came to my cell and said, hey, we watched this chom get put on the yard. We watched him come through the gate, when they brought him to the yard. And we're saying, oh, we're taking bets on how long that was going to last. Unbeknownst, we came a little closer to us than we thought. They put him in our block with a friend of mine. And he said, man, I know what you're going to say, but I just want to hear it come out of your mouth. And, what would you do? I said, what I do? I don't need to say anything. Come on, man. And we know each other. Let's just, I'm just not going to live like that. I don't give a where I'm at. You know what? You may be a defector, you may be a dropout, you may be on a yard full of scum, but there's some good people on this yard too. And it's not about what you're on the yard, but it's who you associate with, who you socialize with. And I want to point something else out. Most prison systems, everybody like that. Those yards are all like that. California is a very unique animal in the way of corrections. Most other states, everybody's on those yards. So it's who you associate with or don't associate with. And it's what you're willing to do if those people violate certain spaces or what have you, or their number comes up or what have you. So for everybody to say from another state, yeah, that guy was this and that. Well, who are you talking about? The kettle calling the pot black. You're on a fucking yard the same way. What are you doing? How long have you spent in the hole? I spent almost 15 years in the shoe. How many years have you spent in the shoe? And I spent a lot of it in solitary on top of that by myself for fucking just being unwilling to be broken. They got a place called VCU where they got this plexiglass on the outside of the cell, Pelican Bay and everything. They tried to break me there. And that's where that captain who was the gunner back at Soledad years ago, she was a captain now. She got me pulled out of there, Anyway, where was I? I was telling you the whole reason with the
chomo on the yard.
Yeah, so he hits the yard. They put him in the cell, and my friend says, what would you do? I said, what I would do? All we got is who we are. It doesn't matter what yard we're on. And I used to tell guys all the time, don't let this live in your head. If we were in any other state, all the general populations are like this. There's no other state like this. So don't even think like that. It's who you associate with, who you live with. Nobody will ever say that I lived with a rapo or a child molester, anybody with an R suffix on their jacket. Nobody will ever say that I lived with somebody who'd done damage to people, sent them to prison or death row or anything like that. You still have choices, and they make it hard for you, but you've got to put your foot down, be willing to pay the prices and the consequences, and they get it real quick, and they leave you I had a lot of juice. Especially on this side, when I came to the SNY side. And this guy was there. He went to visit, and while he was in visit, this guy's laid in his bunk all tucked in like a snug bug in the rug, and he's dead as a doornail, beat, just skull and pieces and everything else, And I came and got him after he went out, and he told me and my wife, hey, you know what? See you down the road when I see you, brother, and, good luck and goodbye. And, tells my wife the same thing, and his mom gets up and leaves, and they pull him out, and they arrest him right there and take him to the hole and give him a beef. But that guy lasted about a month. I don't even think a month, maybe 2 weeks, 10 days. 10 days. Yeah. Now they could have put that guy in any other cell, just about 80% of any other cell, and he would have been just fine. And that would have never happened. So the sergeant that forced that cell, because the guards didn't want it to happen, a sergeant said no. And this lieutenant and this other sergeant said, no, he's going in there, and that's where he's going. So it was basically a setup. And this guy had killed a couple of other cellies throughout the system, before. So, this was a setup, basically. Get rid of one guy and fuck another guy over in the process who's never getting out anyhow. Speaking of the SNY, they don't even have SNY yards anymore now. Now they got what they call designated and non-designated. And there's more non-designated yards than there are designated yards in the system. So you got guys that have never been affiliated, associated, and they're on a non-designated yard with every other buddy, including the pieces of crap. And the pieces of crap stay in their little crews away from things. They get touched, they get hit every now and then. But the system's not what it used to be. And they got this thing called the California model they're trying to promote right now. And I say they're letting people out of prison right now. I was doing 2 life sentences plus time on top of that. I wasn't even eligible for parole till my 89th birthday for a 4-year crime. I was absconded from parole. I was out 28 days. And I was at a house, it went down, this guy comes over, his broad's running her mouth. He tells her, shut the fuck up. She tells him, fuck you. He comes and grabs her by the throat, beats her to the ground after beating her old man. I'm not Captain Save a Ho, but I don't like that. I don't go for that kind of shit in my presence. More importantly, I didn't need the cops there. It's at a triplex unit or a duplex unit or something. And I'm absconded. I'm on the run. They're looking for me. And so I tell this guy, hey, take it on the arches, pal. Get on down the road. And he tells me, you do what you got to do, and I'll do what I got to do. So I pulled a 380 out of a shoulder rig, and I shot him one time in the side of the chest. I stopped. I took deliberate aim. I could have killed him. Truth be told, it's unfortunate. It was none of my business. I would have just left normally, but I couldn't. When this guy told me, "F you," this becomes a matter of honor for the brand. I let this guy disrespect me. He's disrespecting the brand. I've disrespected the brand. Now I've got to go. And if I can't be got because I lock up or whatever, any male heirs of mine will take my place. So there's a law to this unlawlessness that people could never understand. They think, oh, I live a life of an outlaw and a break-in, and there's no such thing. Everybody's accountable to somebody. Everybody's going to mind somebody. And so I was actually halfway down the sidewalk to this guy who was going to give me a ride out of there, and I stopped and I thought about my kids that do time and stuff like that. And I thought, I went back in. I told her that at this point he's embroiled in a fight with her boyfriend, got him in a headlock. I told everybody, get the out of the way. Everybody moves the best they can. I just walk up and I cap this guy right in the, right here, just one time with a full metal jacket, hollow point, plus P, 380 round. And I knew it was going to do damage, but it was going to drop him right there as well. And I knew it was going to expand upon entrance, so it wasn't going to likely to reach any vitals. And it did some damage to his liver and everything else. And this guy had a longer record than me and everything else. He testified against me, But in his favor, when it came to my time to go to the parole board, I'm elderly parole, which is a law that would only pass 7 years ago. So it's my only way that I ever got to go to the board. He testified on my behalf and said he feels like I should have a chance to get out and live my life. And so, I mean, he did that for me, you know. And, you know, I harbor no ill will against him. I didn't know him at the time. I'd rather have not had to do that to him, but it was him or me or mine. The choice was real simple. So, you know, if it
how old were you? How old were you, Casper, when the shooting happened?
I was 32, and I was the law on the streets. So for me to make that look bad was even worse. If I wouldn't have done something, it would have really made the brand look impotent and like they don't have the shit together and that people are not running things the way they should.
How long had you been out?
I was out 28 days.
28 days.
Yeah. So.
You went from Corcoran to.
Oh no! This was I left Corcoran. I paroled from Corcoran April 1st, 1990. I was out for almost 6 months. That was my first stretch. I was at a bar in Orange County, and you know, a chitty bar that my old lady was working at the time, and you know, I had my Harley parked out front, and you know, there's these two honest Joes or whatever, just in there drinking beer, but they're steroided out, you know, and the one's an Indian. American Indian. I tell him, hey, what are you doing? He's disrespecting the women, you know, knocking ashtrays off and they're bending over. So I write a kite to this guy, a note on a napkin, on a cocktail napkin, and I tell him, I shoot it over to him. I tell him, hey, there's nothing wrong with bending the elbow, having a good time, but you're disrespecting these dames, and one of them's mine. What are you going to do when you get to her and you disrespect her? We're going to have a problem. And the guy says, I apologize. No, I don't want to beef, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes right back to doing it, staring me square in the eyes from across the bar. And so I shoot him another kite, and I have this dame take it over to him. I tell him, hey, Trick, bring your shit to the yard. You know, I mean, I was institutionalized, you know, so bring your shit to the yard. It means bring your knife to the yard. We're going to handle our business. And he goes, huh? I say, yeah, bring your shit out to the parking lot, punk. He goes, I'm going to scalp you, motherfucker. You know, I said, all right, well, come on, let's get out there. So we get out there, and, you know, he comes out right away. And, you know, he starts thinking like, you know, like guys out the streets, they think that, you know, you talk some words, you do a little shoving, you get, you know, this is prison rules, man. This is a shoe, you know. As soon as he came out the door, run his mouth, I stabbed him, and I scalped him, you know. And had like I don't know how many stitches it was. They had to staple his head back together where it came off, you know, and he ran from me, and then you know, I took a deal. You know, he did my defense for me. When the cops came, some passerby saw this going down, and they called the police. And so they went and pulled over to a parking lot, a gas station. They called the police. This is before cell phones and whatnot. This is 1990. And, you know, the cops show up, and this guy's got an axe. Their agriculture works at the yard where he's got an axe with a yellow handle, and he's chopping into the front of this bar. You know, about this far away from the door, missing the door, and the front of the bar is wood. So there's the axe marks and everything else. So in my defense, when I go to court, they offer me a deal. I just got out. They said, "Oh, we're going to offer you a deal for attempted second degrey. You know, so we'll give you 17 years flat." I said, "You lost your fucking mind, man. I just did 7 years. I'm not holding up 17 years. You lost your mind." And so they said, you know, well, we got you. I said, yeah. So, you know, I'd become a bit of a jailhouse lawyer by that time. I hadn't gone to law school yet, but I'd been in the law libraries a lot. So I'd tell them, look, here's the deal. Let me tell you what the deal is. The deal is 2 years today. Take it or leave it, or I take this to the box. This is the way the jury's going to see this. They're going to see those axe marks in that wall as part of the evidence that I'm going to get on discovery. This guy came at me and attacked me with an axe after having words in a bar, and I defended myself. Doesn't matter that you got an ex-con with a weapon over 2 inches on a blade. That's what you got. You got nothing else. You got a 2-year beef, because I still have the right to defend myself. Even if I take a gun off of a counter and shoot somebody, I still have a right to defend myself. Well, they knew they were beat. So they said, 2 years? I said, 2 years today. So we signed the paperwork. I took the 2-year deal. So I went up to Pelican Bay Shoe. And, I got out 16 months later, and I was out this time for almost 5 months. And then I went back again, you know, with a brother of mine who I loved like a father, like a second father. My family loved him. That's a whole story we'll get back into, going back to outlaw motorcycle clubs and when I ran away from home at 14 and stuff. But so we got busted for a burglary that wasn't a burglary at all. We went to go, clip this guy who was giving meth to these little 14-year-old girls and having sex with them. And we'd been told by a guy in his little circle that he was re-upping that morning. And before he got the chance to re-up at a certain hour, he'd have, money in a sports duffel bag, 100,000, and so we were going to go two birds with one stone. We're going to come up on that 100 large and we were going to take his wind. It's down in the middle of the desert. So we went down a wrong dirt road, which became a dry river wash, and got his old lady's truck stuck on the I was driving. I got it stuck. I got it stuck, on the housing unit of the axle on a rock, on a big river rock. And wouldn't you know, it just happened to be a day where by 9, 10 o'clock, it's like 112, 113 degrees. We're out of, we're just dehydrated. So we break into this house, that's snowbirds, and we turn the water on because the water, instead of being on the outside, is on the inside of this particular house, so that they couldn't be, it was like a survivor, thing. So they couldn't be, tied off from anybody from the outside. So we went and we got the water and we left. Nothing was taken. There was nothing in there. Nobody was there. All their utilities were off, and while we're out is when the neighbors called the police. This neighbors were like 100 yards away. It's in the middle of the desert. And they came and they clipped us, now for a violent felon convicted, there's no such thing as breaking and entering. It's first degree burglary. It's an inhabited dwelling, even if the people are in Canada at the time, snowbirds, and that's the way it works. Ironically, as a footnote, the guy we were after was out there in the desert about 200 yards away watching us with binoculars with a sheet spray painted like camouflage and, sagebrush put on and everything. He's watching this all go down. He knew how close he came. And, who knows? Maybe he's going to call the police, actually. I don't know. But we didn't get that information until later on discovery. But once again, they tried to tell us, look, we want you both. We'll give you 5 years. You both got to plead to it. If we don't, we're going to take your partner here, who's got such an extensive record with violence and records, and he's an outlaw motorcycle club member. We're going to hit him in the feds with what they call the Trigger Lock Act, which becomes the ACA, the Armed Career Criminal Act. And he's going to get 25 years off the top. So you both take this deal, or he's going up the river, and you might get off with a couple of years. Obviously, I'm not going to let that happen to him. He looks at me and goes, "You do what you got to do, son." I said, "No, I am going to do what I got to do. Do you trust me?" He goes, "I trust you." I said, "Let me handle this." First thing I do, I tell him, Your Honor, I'd like to confer with counsel. And so I tell my counsel, I said, "I'm going to be representing us from this point on, And he goes, "Well, you're not going to represent." I said, "Yeah, I'm going to represent both of us. Don't make me do a Feretta hearing to be my own representation. And then I'll speak for both of us, even through his mouthpiece." I said, "Look, we'll just make this simple. We'll make a deal right here. Everybody can be happy." So they sat there, everybody conferred. They said, "Well, this is highly unlikely and unheard of, but we'll go ahead and we'll do that if you'll take a deal. Clear the calendar." And the first thing I did, this DA, his name was McDonald. I'll never forget it. And I kept calling him Ronald McDonald because he was an ass clown. I said, "You got to get rid of him. We don't want him. Go find us a female DA." And no shit. When they got this gal named Sue Stedman, and Sue, and she ended up becoming, moving up the ladder in the court system. But she came and she goes, "Will I do cannabis?" "Yeah, you'll do fine, Sue." We knew all these people from the system. We brokered a deal with her real quick, 2 years for both of us. We'll take it right now. So we took the 2 years. That was the end of that. I go back to Pelican Bay. I do another 16 months. I get out. I'm out. And that's when this starts unfolding right here. And
Casper, so at this point, some people are wondering, okay, you're in prison. AB is, dominating your life. But when you get out of prison, are you free from the gang, or does it continue onto the streets?
No, you're never free from the organization ever. In fact, blood in, blood out dictates a brother's a brother till you're dead, till they kill you or you die, or whatever. That's just the way it is now. Things have changed, and they watered down a whole lot of stuff to recruit a whole lot of people because their numbers were dwindling just not too long ago in the last 10 or 15 years. So a lot of that's changed, but to the old guard, nothing's changed. That's the way it is. And like the new guard's trying to bring that all back. So that's the way it is. So you get out on the streets, you're expected to be an earner. It's nothing. It's no different than anybody else's organization. You're an earner, and what you do is you get soldiers, and everybody that's out that's active, whether they're a skinhead or a NLR or whatever they might be. If they want to make money, they make money with you, through you, and for you. And you kick your part up, and you keep your part. And if you do things right, you can come up really good. I mean, I've lived like a king, 1 week or 1 month, and like a pauper the next, and it's a very hand-to-mouth existence. I had a point there where I was throwing around money. I mean, I probably went through a 20 or 30 grand in a little less than a month. Like it was nothing. Couldn't understand people with petty debts, to the IRS. So what are you worried about? And it's, $6,000, $10,000. That's nothing. That's chump change. Not to honest people who work hard for a living. It's not, But I had never really done that. So I didn't, never more than 6 months. So
At this young age, then on the streets, you're an earner. Were you just fully committed to that lifestyle? There wasn't a part of you that felt like, I just don't want this anymore. I want to have a normal family life, get a job and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't know what kind of answers you get to queries like that from a lot of these guys. I haven't never watched anything of yours or anybody's, in for that matter, until just the other day. That's what prompted me to do this. So I don't know what other guys answer, but I'm going to be completely candid with you about all this stuff. So no, I didn't wish to get away from it. I wish to be a part of some of the politics, obviously, because it was erroneous and toxic. But you're God. You're God, man. Let me tell you something, man. When I first hit the bricks in 1990, I was 27 years old. I was 4 months shy of my 28th birthday. And anything that had to do with white criminal activity, organized crime, from the Tijuana border of San Diego, National City, all the way to the Ventura County line, or the San Fernando Valley line, where there were a couple of brothers. Everything in between that space was mine. I was God. I mean, I was John Gotti. I was the Pope of Palm Springs. I felt very powerful, very immature, emotionally speaking, albeit very even-handed in the way I went about doing things. But if you didn't pay what you were supposed to, or you touched somebody who was protected by me, or go by the fellas, I carried a pair of Weiss tin snips in my back pocket, and I'd be quick to cut your thumb or your pinky off as a lesson. If it was a minor infraction you were being punished for, I'd give you your pinky or your thumb back, put a nice chest, go to the ER, do what they can do. If it wasn't, that now belonged to me. You weren't getting that back. That was the pound of flesh for the brothers. But, this whole thing is evolving around the brand, which obviously I get it. But I was involved more so on the streets, even though I had to have certain ties to them. My business on the streets was more with my friends of Italian persuasion. Palm Springs was the holding ground, a couple in LA, but almost everybody was out in the Springs. A lot of these guys are gone now. Bobby D, the Zangari brothers, but they're all into legitimate businesses out there, restaurateurs. They have all the nightclubs in the bottom of the Hyatt Regency Hotel and the Sheraton, and they have all the nightclubs hemmed up out there, and they have all the restaurants. It's all legitimate money, and things go through that stuff. But I had a very good rapport with these people for many, many years. It's funny that you had Joey on there talking about collecting for a Colombo family. I mean, these guys were all Bonanno guys, and I used to do their collecting. Me and Big Chuck, we'd go do their collecting out anywhere from between the Springs and L.A. So I had a lot of good rapport with these people. They did a lot of good things for me. Some legit, some not. But I mean, they just, I'd have been got when I was in trouble by my own a lot sooner had it not been for these people. There were people that came looking for me while I was out there, and I got the message over a phone call. And I said, well, let me just point me in the direction. Let me know. Thanks for the heads up. Don't worry about it. It's already taken care of. And so when I got busted that time, they were incensed that 2 of their people went missing, and, so, I mean, I owe it to those friends that are no longer around. So that's the only reason I'm talking about is because they're gone. They're no longer around. But they gave me some cushion, they gave me some air. And, and there's a whole lot more to that than that. I mean, there was other people I was involved with that I did things for prior to ever coming to prison or ever even believing I'd come to prison, down in Central America and Mexico. Once I got involved with illicit behavior, one person, one acquaintance led to another, to another, to another. In the 1980s, when I got out of the military, the early 1980s, white was everywhere. It was the premier party, favor, and I ended up through a military friend, somebody who was actually a superior of mine, who I respected, cut a great figure. He was a Vietnam vet and Green Beret, and he had told me, hey, there's work down here, contracting work, security work, and so. I got a plane ticket from him, and you get a visa in a day back then. This is all post 9/11. They had this thing called visa in a day, and you could use false ID and everything else. Get down to the border and go pick this thing up. You'd cross into Mexico like it was nothing. No border check or anything. Just go through, right there at San Ysidro, and you'd go to the embassy down there, and you'd pick up, whatever embassy they were using. And you'd pick up this visa in a day, and you'd have free passage down to Honduras, and then from there Nicaragua, El Salvador. Colombia. And so I can tell you this, Cartagena in the early 80s was a happening city.
Casper, I'm trying to figure out, was there anyone who tried to put the brakes on? Had your relationship with your parents completely broken down in your 20s? It sounds to me you've just completely submerged yourself with criminal associations at this point of the story. Did your parents try to intervene at all?
Well, I had good folks, and my mom and dad realized they'd lost any kind of capacity for controlling me by the time I was 14. First of all, a little background. I was in special classes. I was dyslexic, hyperactive disorder, ADHD, ADD. I had it all. And I was dyslexic. And then I had to take a host of narcotics to treat this: Ritalin, Adderall, Tofranil. One thing to calm your nerves because the other one's amping you up. It's a methamphetamine. And unbeknownst to people, you get Tourette's. You present with Tourette's syndrome symptoms, but you don't have Tourette's. It's a byproduct of the Ritalin or the Adderall. And so I like I said, I wasn't a jock to start with, but this even made me more of an outcast. And then I would have to go to special classes, what they called EH classes. That ostracized me even more. It's the classroom on the far back of the building. Nobody wants to. Those are not the cool kids. And these are the kids that turned into the criminals and the thugs, where they're accepted by gangs and criminal crews because they accept you for who you are. And that's how my beginning actually started. So while I came from a white bread area, socialite with a social calendar, cotillions, coming outs, debutantes, the whole 9 yards. Think of the show The OC. For as bullshit as that was about Orange County, there was some of that in the beginning that was actually, that was my life growing up. And you don't have crime, you don't have people that go to prison. You don't know anybody like that. But I had an uncle who was a wise guy, and through marriage, and to my mom's sister, and I had his associates. And so I started out, knowing people in Orange County that were those guys. They were all in the produce game from the farmer's market. And these guys were getting like a quarter cent on every piece of produce. And I used to think as a kid back then, a quarter cent, what's that? There's millions and millions of pieces of produce that come through the farmer's market in LA every day. That's real money there, pal, I'll tell you. Anyway, and from that, I just ended up going to we got the racetracks at Hollywood Park, Santa Anita, the quarter horse races in Orange County, Los Alamitos, on Catella. And hey, we want you to go out there, watch these guys, and tell us if they're earning, if they're losing, what they're doing with the money. And, for that, we'll give you some money. So I'm making like $500 a week doing this. $500 a week, and like in the 70s, and I'm like a 15-year-old kid. That's big money right there. I'm doing things. And So you go from that to meeting other people. You get to learn a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then one day, if you're right, you keep your mouth shut. You're not a braggadocious kind of idiot. And none of my friends in the neighborhood where I grew up, none of them knew. I mean, they just thought I was just straight up, little Freddie Crowell, Fritzy Crowell. I mean, that's how. And they called me Bruiser because I was always fighting. So that was my first nickname, was Bruiser. And in their minds, it's like, yeah, he's just out. He goes away for a while, he comes back, and they have no idea. Where you been? Oh, I was down in Baja, K38 surfing. Or I was up at the coast surfing, or I saw some friends, or that's what they believe. They believe what they want to believe because you tell them that. But I was in New York doing a piece of work, really, and got paid $5,000. My first real money that I ever got, my first taste that my beak got wet with. And like I said, I was never going to be one of these guys because I wasn't of their ethnicity. But I had a lot of friends and a lot of respect and a lot of love from some of these people. As their kids or nephews were growing up, they were being sent to Yale, Princeton, Harvard to get MBAs and stuff like that. And they'd have these nice nickel-plated and chrome-plated 45s and stuff. Nothing as flashy as these guys south of the border would end up doing. But they'd have stuff. None of these guys are pulling the button on anything. They're not pushing the button on nothing. They wouldn't throw a brick in a blackout, as they say back east. And, these guys were just knowing it. And, guys like us, we're like the kids they didn't have. They got the best of both worlds. We're not blood to them, but we have a good friendship and we'll go do things that need to get done. But their kids and nephews get to go off to school and they're hoping that that'll take things into the next legitimate era and stuff. But, it's kind of like they call it the Mickey Mouse Mafia out there, the West Coast. Actually, a lot of people that don't know. It's not a movie. So there's really no mafia. Nobody ever calls themselves the mafia. As far as the La Cosa Nostra goes, or the LCN, out here in the Western states, it was called the Western Crime Syndicate. They didn't call themselves anything. There was mostly Bonanno guys out here and Columbos, and so. But I mean, it was the Western Crime Syndicate, and there was guys that were Jews involved with it. There were guys that were Italians involved in it. Wherever the earners, the money, the early Russians that would come in down to Little Odessa in the Fairfax district in LA. That's a whole other story. But you get an entrance into this world, and one door opens, another door opens, another door opens. It's up to you how far you're willing to go, how far you're willing to take it. I would never glamorize this, but these were glory days. You didn't want to not be a part of this once you were involved in it. Once you're involved in it, it's like there was a time before I came to the joint the first time where I see some nasty shit that followed people up here from Colombia. Now, I had a front row seat to watching it all go down. And fortunately, it didn't involve me. It wasn't a part of anything that I was, but I knew it was coming. I was told it was coming. I actually got to see the premier beginning of that as it unfolded from LA to Nevada to Clark County to Las Vegas to Atlantic City to down to Miami. I mean, the beginning of it happened here, and I got to see it up close and personal. And it's like after that, I thought, okay, I'm done with all this. These guys are crazy. They're whacking their own family out and stuff like that. They're just So I told myself, I'm done. I'm retiring. I got enough. I got enough of what I want and everything. And I'm good. I'm gonna go straight. I actually believed it.
How old?
I don't know. I'm 22, 23 almost, maybe 20. I was right before I go to the joint. I actually went down to Long Beach to the docks, and I shaped up. I bought a union card and shaped up on the docks, for a couple of mornings. Thought I'm going to start a new life. Jumped on a boat with a friend of mine, got some Coast Guard papers temporary to sell for 6 months. Did a merchant marine gig. I'm doing everything I can to get away and do things right. And but in your heart at night, you can't sleep. There's a buzz that you miss. It's in your head. And, you miss the action. It's a sick, twisted thing. You miss the action. You miss it's not even all about the money anymore. It's just your friends. These people are not ever really your friends, but they're your friends. These are the closest people, closer than your mom and dad would ever be in your life. I mean, you're bleeding with these people. You're bloodletting with these people. but after that, that was so crazy. I thought, yeah, I don't even want to get on the wrong side of that, even out of somebody's paranoia. There was no way. Any other organization, you could have seen this stuff coming. There's tells, like a guy who can telegraphs his punch in the ring. There's tells, like a poker tell or something. But there's no tell with these people. When they came to mete out their justice in the early '80s in America, they did it quick and swift. I mean, people were starting to know about it by the time they got to Miami with their. But I mean, between LA and Chicago, I mean, it was like the night of long knives in Hitler's Germany. I mean, it was quick, and boy, it was just so. It was so ugly. I thought, yeah, I don't ever want to get caught up in any of this, so I'm done. And but I was not done, and I was not even close to done, unbeknownst to me. And that was nothing really as what would be in my future. And but you don't know that then. You don't know what you don't know. And
what was your parents' reaction to you going to the joint the first few times?
So my mother and I were estranged from the time I left home the first time as a teenager until the night before I went in the military. I told my dad I only needed one signature. He signed it. My mom begged him not to, even though we weren't talking. He signed it anyway. The recruiter told me, I want you to go by and see your mom. She talked to me. She doesn't want to see me. She talked to me. She wants to see you before you leave. So he took me over there before he took me to the AV station for my physical and induction. And so I saw my mom. And that right there just like instantly healed the riff of us being on the outs, and we started developing a relationship again. I mean, I was really close to my mom as a little boy, as a child. I could tell you some fantastical stories, including Bobby Vinton at Magic Mountain and my mom and everything. But, we started having a second very good relationship from that point on. When I ended up in the joint, my mom told me the first time she contacted me was at San Quentin. I called her actually from Soledad right before I left for San Quentin. They let me use the phone and in the counselor's office. And so I talked to her for the first time there. She told me, I'm going to tell you something, and I hope you'll forgive me for this. I'm glad you're there. As bad as it could be, at least I know where you're at. I'm not worried about getting a call at night that they've picked you up, or that your body's laying in in somewhere in East LA or or New York or whatever. And she said that was the hardest thing on her in her life was waiting for a phone call. And when I'd gone down to South America, first Central America, then South America, I came back 3 months later, and she goes, "You're not doing that again, are you?" I said, and I got a check came to her house because I used her house. I didn't have a P.O. box yet. So I got a check from Omega Security. And so she said, "You got a check from the security person?" So yeah. She goes, "I opened it." I said, "Okay." She goes, "What are you doing for that kind of money down there?" I said, "This is a legitimate security outfit, Ma." She goes, "Well, what are you doing?" And anyway, I told her, I said, "Well, let's open an account. We'll put it in, she goes, "I can't put that kind of money in my account. I pay taxes, people are going to ask questions." So I went and cashed the check, and I put so much money with her, and I put some in a little, but she begged me not to go back down there. And I told her, "That's where the money is, Mom. That's where I'm going." And I went back down there, and I came back a couple of months later. The romanticism of it wore off. It was never what I thought it would be. Never ever was it anything like a movie or. It was just ugly. It was just very ugly, and it was a bad scene. And so I came back, and when I finally did end up in the joint, my mom said, asked me to forgive her. Said she was relieved that at least she knew where I was at, and that she wasn't going to get a call. If she did, she knew it would be from the prison. And as long as it wasn't from the prison, she figured, well, you know what? She doesn't have to worry about where any other phone number that she doesn't, know is calling her and saying, "Hey, this is us. We're from here. Your son's." She goes, "I know you got friends there." I said, "I do have friends here." But
did she visit you in the prison?
I never allowed my mother to come visit me in prison until this last term. And she asked me, "Are you still not going to allow me to see you? You're going away for life." I said, "You can come and see me, Mom." So I saw her before I actually left the county jail a couple of times. She made it to court dates. My dad never missed a court date. He was there for every one of them. My mom couldn't come after a while when they started talking about my history. They're trying to paint you out to be a bad guy. The cops came to her once. feds and some local, and they showed her some homicide pictures, very ugly, and they said, your son did that. And you're his mother. Most of these guys will listen to their mom. She goes, my son didn't do that. My son did not do that. And if my son did do that, I can tell you that was a very bad person right there. And but she told me about it. She cried. And so I got to see her on Mother's Day. I was in Corcoran Shoe on my way to Pelican Bay. And they had lost my medical file while I was there in transit. It's a game they play when they're busing you. So I was there for a month, couldn't spend no money, couldn't do anything. At that time, I saw the Mexican mobsters coming down from the Rico, Bat, Boxer, everybody was back there. You know, I'd just been hit. I'd been hit in the shoe at Hatchby Max. So, the Boxer's telling everybody, hey, don't talk to Casper. You don't know if he's going to do right now, if he's going to rat or anything. You know, he's in the hat. He just got hit and blah, blah, blah. You know, leave that to his people. And, I don't want to mention the other guys because they're still made guys that are in good and they're in the hierarchy of that organization. But I know a couple of them since I was in junior high school, and they both told Rene, Boxer, told him, hey, you know what, this is our friend. And, you know, by the way, he understands Spanish, so he understands what you're saying right now. And so he backed up and told me, you know how it is, Casper. I got to look out for my people. It's no harm, no disrespect. I said, yeah, I understand, I get it. But so I was there for like a month, and I thought these guys are all going back up to the Bay. I'll be on the bus with them Monday morning when they all shoot back up to the Bay. Everybody would already, you know, and because he was there. Him and Buzzard were both housed there for medical reasons. Anyway, long story short, I did not get on the bus with him back up to Pelican Bay. So, and a month later, I'm still there. Well, Mother's Day rolls around, and my mom makes arrangements with the sergeant. Who's a black sergeant. I can't remember his name, but he said, I've known your son. I was here so long that I was here the day he got made. And I remember the kites going around and our information from the rats that were debriefing. He goes, you know what? I've always had nothing but respect for your son. You come up here, I'll get you a visit. Well, they went to the wrong facility at first. So by the time they found the right facility in the shoe, visits were actually over. They'd made everybody leave. But this guy gave me and my mom and my sister and my niece a half an hour, you know, so and he said, it's the best I could do, Big Cass, but, you know, I got so much respect for you. I wasn't going to leave your mom. And my mom thanked him, and she said, you thank that man? I said, I will, Ma. And so after that, you know, I got up to the Bay, and, my dad had just passed away, you know, and he just died, like, suddenly. My mom said, I got diabetes. I've got, she lost her vision, so she was legally blind. She couldn't drive anymore. She was on dialysis 3 times a week. I mean, it was ravishing her fast. She just didn't take it seriously. She wouldn't take the medicine when they first told her to take it. Oh, it's a pill. If you don't take a pill, what harm could be done, you know? And, so she was doing insulin twice a day, 3 times a day. I mean, it just ravished her. So she asked me, is there just any way I can get you in your heart of hearts to find a way to make it happen to where I could see you without glass between us? That's all it took. That was it right there. That was where I tapped out. I knew she didn't have long to live. I contacted the SSU in Sacramento, and I think the squad, and the squad got at me first, and they couldn't believe it. You know, there's a guy named Devin Hawks who was an SSU, an IGI guy at Pelican Bay. I've known him and been through things before I was actually fully validated. And, that guy gave me so much respect, so much time. I got nothing but respect for Devin Hawks. The guy's a straight shooter. He's a stand-up guy as far as, a cop goes. And he ain't about bullshit. And he's not insulting to your integrity, your dignity. And his boss, J.M. Brittle, Lieutenant Brittle, he couldn't believe it. He was up in Sacramento with the SSU when I checked in, and he just could not believe it. Like, you're somebody we never ever thought would come through this. And I told him, I said, look, I told O'Neill, the one who debriefed me, I asked for Devin Hawks. He said he's not here anymore. And I specifically asked for him, because of my rapport with him. He said he wasn't there anymore. But he said he was real familiar with me. He's followed my history for years, and would it be okay if it was him? And I told him, I said, look, they had this board in their office with pictures of the guys they wanted. like almost a pyramid from the top down. And then on the other side, they had pictures of the guys that they had flipped, like a trophy wall. And I told them, I said, I don't want my picture on that wall. Nobody's running me off. I'm not running. I'm not hiding. I'm not running away. I'm granting a dying woman a wish to hold her hand without glass between us before she leaves this mortal coil. That's it. That's all. I have no loyalty or allegiance to these people. They've tried to kill me several times now. It's not about that. And if my mother was already gone, I'd be sitting here rotting in the hole. But I want to see my mother. Is that possible? And can we do this without putting my dignity in check? They said, we give you your word. They won't do it. They actually took the picture and scissors and cut it up in front of me. So there was no picture going on that wall. That was the first act of good faith. The second, they said, we'll get you in the THU program, which is transitional housing after you debrief, and we'll get you down to Calipatria, where all your dropout Confederates are at. You guys have a yard down there all to yourself. There's no weirdos on it. Although they made it sound, they sold it real good. And I'd be 80 miles from my mom in Palm Springs or Palm Desert. So I'd be able to see my mom as often as possible on the weekends. So I did my thing. I told only on myself and a couple of brothers, like I said, that had passed away because that's the way they would have wanted it. The only part, that I actually did, that there's just no way to sugarcoat it. They give you a list at the end of all this with a bunch of names on it. And it says member, associate, non, just there's like 4 boxes. And I had no heart or stomach to finger anybody. So I took my thumb like a rule and I went down the boxes and I just closed my eyes and I just clipped every so often as I counted. So I have no idea who marked, who didn't mark, but I did not actively, or not that it makes it any better. It doesn't make it any better for me. But nobody went to jail behind me. Nobody went to prison behind me. Nobody went to death row behind me. Nobody went to the shoe behind me, at seg behind me. And you know what? There's paperwork everywhere now in this public age that we live in. I defy anybody who wants to call me a fucking rat beyond telling on myself and a couple of brothers that are dead that would have wanted it that way for me to get out to see my mother. Show the paperwork. Show me the paperwork. Show me the paperwork, and I'll admit things full-fledged. There's nothing to show, And all these fat mouths that have been on these yards in these other states with all this crap and creeps and pieces of crap to start with, check yourself. You ain't nothing but a punk with a paint job, and a big brushy mustache and an ego that's bigger than any of your real credibility. Because you know what? You're out there walking the yard in line with those, pieces of crap. Where were you ever? Where you had to do anything or put any work in, and what have you done? And that's another thing. A lot of these guys, they get to the top, but they don't put any work in anymore. They haven't put work in 20, 30, 40 years. I put my own work in wherever I could, whenever I could. I never asked anybody to do what I could actually physically get my hands on myself. So what? I'll use yucks, and that's the way it is. I'm sorry that I did any of this. I really am. It's not the man I am. I'm a holy man. I'm a religious man. I'm a legally ordained, cleric for my faith. I run a ministry. I'm all about serving my gods and my folk. I'd like to say that right from the gate. I've written books on fundamental Odinism that are available on Amazon.com.
Very highly rated. Amazon UK, you're like almost 5 stars.
Really? That's good to know.
Yeah, 40 reviews, I think.
Well, maybe I'll find a way to get one signed across the pond. I've got 3 of them. One of them is hard to get now, and I've seen it sold for $600 on the internet. So, but the whole thing is I live my life in service to something higher. I spent my first part of my life, even with this faith, knowing what I was doing was wrong. I'm eating my own. I'm betraying my own. We eat our own. I had a brother named Jess man. He's dead now. He died from a stroke and a heart attack. But they'd had many attempts on his life. He was Blues Boy, Wendell North. That's what kept him alive for so long. But Jess was no punk. He was a hog. He was a stud. And, like him or not, Jess could handle himself. And, what laid him low was a stroke, and he died in the hospital where Joe Morgan died at Corcoran prison, But Jess told him, yeah, we ought to write a book. I've got the perfect title for it. We only kill our own friends, or we only kill our friends. And it's just the truth. You look at the number of people that have been killed by the organization that are our own race, our own people. It's going to fucking outweigh literally 10 to 1 anybody of our enemies or of people of color or what have you.
Which, Casper,
So,
that leads to my next question, which was, earlier on you stated that your own people tried to kill you multiple times. Can you give us those stories?
well, I can. So the most recent time, the last time was, it's a Tehachapi Max. It was Thanksgiving Day, actually, in 1996. And, this guy, he's now debriefed and last night I know at Kern State Prison. He testified in the RICO trials and all that stuff. I'd like to point out also, just real quick, in that as far as being a rat and such forth, while I was filming the National Geographic, the U.S. Attorney General's office came and offered me a deal because I'm suing life for 2 life sentences for 3 strikes, not for murder. They offered me a walk out the front door into WITSEC within 72 hours if I would testify against Mills and Bingham and Stinson and Griffith. And I told them, you got me fucked up with somebody else. So we can protect you. Protect me. I don't need your protection. You're not my friend. You just want somebody to do your bidding along with the rest of the rat parade. I just wanted nothing to do with it, and I was married to my wife recently at that point. So I went back to my cell and I buried my face in my pillow while my cellie was at work, and I wept because I thought, when I tell her she's going to leave me, you passed up a chance to come home to me, but she didn't. She told me, she goes, I married you because of the man you are. You wouldn't be the man you are if you would have done that. I said, in the UK, they call that taking the soup, and the IRA used to use it. The UVV used to use it. They say you're taking the soup, Instead of taking your nick, you take the soup. I said, well, I'm never going to take the soup, I have no loyalty to these people, but these other people aren't my friends either. They're just using me as a pawn to do their business. I'm not going to have anything to do with that. Certainly not going to have anything to do with people that were once friends of mine, no matter how it turned out. I'll do my own bidding. They want to try to kill me, then you know what? I'm of the Danny Green school of thought. Here I am. I'm not hiding from anybody, Danny Green was an Irish gangster in Cleveland back in got smoked back in the 70s. But, I'm of that school of thought. I ain't involved in anything. I ain't trying to be a threat to anybody. I am not a threat to anybody. But if you come at me, you better come right or stay the fuck home, because I ain't forgot how to do anything I've been trained to do or have been doing. And while all the mouths are running, I'm going to defend myself and mine, I would prefer just to live my life peacefully, out of the light, just do my thing. But anyway, this guy's on a yard like that now. Before they changed him over. But on Thanksgiving Day, he refused to sell up. I was willing to sell up with him. Remember, this is attached max. They can't shoot in the cells. So once you go at it, it's to the death. So somebody's dead or you both cuff up. So he wouldn't sell up with me. But he came out and I told him, I told him, I'm in the hat. He goes, yeah, that's between you and the commission, brother. You've been doing this all longer than me. I'm not trying to be a part of that. Well, I knew it was coming. Shame on me for not getting off first. But, Thanksgiving Day, him and another guy come out, and this piece is beautiful. If I'd have used this piece on somebody, they would not have walked away. Would not have walked away. That's for sure. I mean, this piece was about this fucking big, all told. And the steel on it alone was about fucking 8 or 9 inches. And it was good steel. It was done in a machine shop. And then it had a handle on it. And we're walking, and it feels like somebody's patting me on the back real hard. And then again, and I turn around, and so he hits me twice in the back, just misses my spine. I mean, it's in my spine, but it just misses going deep enough. So he hits me in the spine twice in the back. I turn around, he hits me in the chest twice. And then, I hold up my hand right here. I don't know if you can see it. And there's a scar right there where it went all the way through my thumb. There's another one right there, another one right there. I close my fist. There's another one right there. So, and then I tried to swing on him. He hits the ground and he throws the piece, So they put the yard down, the gunners do. And this guard, he's telling me, Casper, get out, Casper. I don't want to shoot you. And this guy's just laying there with the eating grin on his face like he'd done something. And I want to see him shot. Number one. Number two, no matter what standing I am, I'm still with the tip. And this guy's making us look bad. I said, in my day, you didn't finish the job. You were the next guy in the hit parade. Get up and finish what you started, punk. Get up and finish what the you started. You're making us look bad. And I'm dripping blood, and I wrap my hand in a coat or a T-shirt or something. And he's just laying there with this grin like he'd done something. And apparently sent the word back up to the bay that he really butchered me in and didn't, he butchered my hand a little bit. But that right there, they put me on a walk-alone yard because I refused to lock up. So I wasn't going to the PC yard. So I'm on a walk-alone yard all by myself, going out to recreation activity. And when I got to on the way back up to the bay, you know, when they came to get me to testify in the case against him, which I told them don't do this, they took me to court to testify against him, and I refused to testify. I took the fifth, and the prosecution got very hostile. And he goes, "Might you believe whatever the you want? You're a chump, you know." And he appeals to the judge. The judge is all calm and respectful to me. Mr. Crowell, am I understanding you have no intention to testify? There's nothing to testify, Judge. I don't know what's going on here, what I'm doing here, what he's doing here, what they're doing here. So they dismissed the case. Now this would be a victory for anybody. They'd be happy. Yeah, this is the way we do it. But this guy looked like his best whale just sank at the whale races, you know? His face was just drawn. Little be known to me at the time, he was in the hat himself. And because he didn't kill another brother up in the bay before he came down to attach Max on this writ. But they cleaned all that up eventually. Anyway, so that was the last time, you know. Time before that, they came and tried to get me on the streets twice. And they tried to get me.
Where were you? Where were you on the streets?
I was in Riverside County, Palm Springs. I was living in Palm Desert Ranch Mirage area.
And what was the lead up to that?
So I was told to step back. Okay, so understanding before everybody went to the bay in Corcoran Shoe, everybody went out to this big junta, as they call them, a big sit down. They all got called out to court to New Folsom, and they had a meeting of the minds with all the high commission and council and everybody that was there. They could get down there. Other people stayed back at Corcoran, and they said everybody knew what was already happened, but they said, okay, Blue is definitely telling. He's debriefing. He's given a video and audio tape. You know, he's no longer a part of anything. Not that he was. He was already out bad, but they definitively did that. They said, these people all have to go right here. We're cleaning house. Everybody that he'd made a bunch of people. They were called Blue Rocks, you know, because he issued them shamrocks to insulate himself and brought them in. So they said all these people have to go. They have to be eliminated. Everybody's got to be just completely whacked out. Jess has to be whacked out. These guys on the streets have to be whacked. You know, there was a list of probably about 2,000 people that had to go, you know. And further than that, everybody who was made after this one last guy earlier, 2 years earlier, they had to step back. And when they formed a new commission, they'd be remade again. I was one of those guys right there, as was Wolf. And Wolf Selly was a guy, who was very feared, probably the most feared guy in the whole Aryan Brotherhood history. I'll just say that he's still alive, so I won't mention his name, but he's at Folsom right now, New Folsom. He's 70-something years old, but even the guards still call him Mr. And I mean, they tell me, ones that came over from Mule Creek, where I paroled from recently, say, I was just there with, that guy commands respect, his icy blue eyes and blood. It's like, but so they were my neighbors, and they were celled up together at the time. And he told me and Wolf both, he goes, if you step back like everybody else, nobody who's truly about something will respect you. They'll say they will, and you'll get remade, but you won't, this is going to be a moment that's going to define you. If you don't step back, you're probably going to get moved on, and how you handle that is going to define you. But there's such a fractioning happening right now. People are going to rise to the top with a whole new side to this, and what's going to happen after that is going to be the top dogs are going to win over the commission, the councils between here and the feds, and those who are on the outside of that will be the people that are the losers in this. So it was ugly. I mean, there were so many different cliques within the tip, and everything. I mean, it was sellers were killing each other. It was notorious, man. It was getting ugly real quick and real fast. But I was told to step back. A guy named Thumper was told to step back. Wolf was told to step back. There was others told to step back too, but most of these guys stepped back. I did not. Wolf did not. Thumper did not. And stupid as he was, they went around bragging about it. And they got him on the main line in High Desert. They stabbed the hell out of him. I mean, he was lucky to survive. Wolf got killed out on the streets. There was a robbery that was set up from a drug dealer through people that guided that. If he was successful, it would have yielded the organization good money. But if not, at the very least, it would have killed Wolf, and that would have killed that, And that's what happened. The guy was a nut, he was not all there, and he had a record himself in history. And when he came in, he went with a knife. You don't take a knife to a gunfight, as they say. Well, the guy had a gun, and Wolf had a knife, and he shot him and he killed him. That left me, and I was told to step back. Even eventually Blinky, when we were in Palm Hall, he was in Cyprus, and we never got to hit the yard together. They kept us apart. He told me, hey, you need to think about this. Think about how this can end and how you can still fix this. And I told him I'll take that under consideration. And then I went back and did my stretch back up at the bay. And then I got out. And while I was out, and then I came back, and while I was in the county jail this last time, this kid Ed ended up in Palm Hall with Blinky, and Blinky sent me a kite. He says, "Hey, you really need to step back. You're gonna be done. This is the last warning." And I sent a message back saying, "Hey, the weapon that cuts is always nobler than the tongue that lashes." And I knew I was sealing my fate right there, but I could not help myself. I wasn't going to be punked, and I mean, the truth of the matter is, anybody who's honest about it when they find themselves on that list, it's not going to end there anyhow, no matter what you do. So you might as well ride it till the rails fall off. You know what I mean? And that was my thinking, and that's what I did. And so there was a couple of instances on the streets, like I said, where they came after me. They came at me in the county jail right there at that time, and I ended up stabbing this guy 38 times. And then the guys that came looking for me on the streets, like I said, my other friends, they gave me a nice buffer there, which just incensed people even more again. Okay, well, as far as I remember, like I said, I received a phone call from some friends. First, I received a call from an associate, and he asked me if I talked to somebody. Has somebody talked to you yet? Have they contacted you? I said, no, I haven't talked to that person in about a month and a half, as a matter of fact. And he goes, yeah, well, he's supposed to be contacting you. And I said, what's this about? Because this is from, Italian quarters, and I had no actual business with them at that moment or anything. So he goes, so something happened. He goes, somebody came looking for you, and, they started asking your name around in skinhead circles in Riverside. And so I said, okay, I hadn't heard about this. So anyway, long story short, what happened in a nutshell was these guys came looking for me, and, they said, yeah, he's in a hat, blah, blah, blah. And, they thought that they'd found some friendly people, because most skinheads, they want to be somebody with that. And, but these guys were loyal to me, and they liked me. They liked the fact that I had given them work in the past, that when I was had the authority to green light or red light people, I made sure a whole lot of them didn't get, whacked for personal petty bullshit. So they just happened to come to the wrong place when they approached these guys, and they snatched them up. And all I know is from there, they handed them over to other people that I don't even know how the two contacted each other, but then I got the message. I actually called him. He said he was about to call me. He was looking for a number. He had trouble tracking down a number for either Chuck or I, and that he talked to Chuck's sister, and she was supposed to get a number. But I was calling him now. So great. This is what went down. They found these guys looking for me, questioning, asking about where I was at. They were shooters, and I said, well, just point me in the direction, give me the information and what they look like, who they are. If you have any, he goes, you don't have to worry about it. It's already been taken care of. I said, no, I'll go take no, Casper. It's done. It's over. They're done. It's just, they're not going to come back. They're not going to come bother you. So he goes, you might get some blowback from people, that sent them when they don't return to them. And I thanked him, and that was the end of that. Obviously I stayed on guard after that. Whenever I'd come out and get on my Harley or get in a car, start it, I'd I started the car with the doors open. I'd have the door open in case there was a bomb, hopefully get blown clear of the car. That's another thing. I got blown up when I was, a teenager, in a Pinto. They were after the guy I was with, a friend of mine, and they tried to blow up, but they sent amateurs to do the job. And they had these faulty gas tanks that blew up on these Pintos back in the days, the Ford Pintos and the Pinto wagons. And so I guess they thought that was a good place to put the explosive device. These guys put it back on the gas tank, so the gas tank blew and the whole thing. And I had the door open, so it threw me, and he had the door open when he started the car. It threw us both. We were singed and a little bit burning, but some damaged eardrums, but no worse for the wear. So lucky us. But ever since that, once I knew I was in the hat with these guys, I definitely started paying attention when I started my car. There's a saying in the Have 'em All, which is the Odin talking to us through the Poetic Edda, of good conduct and edict for the Odinist man or woman. Before every doorway, you should look to the left and the right to see what trouble may lie ahead. You never know where enemies lie ahead in the hall. So, I made it a habit to look to the left, look to the right, back to the left, check things out. I started installing cameras. Things like that. Even my home now. This is like Fort Knox. I've got so many alarms, cameras, and lights and stuff. My neighbors love me. I live in a neighborhood full of cops. Cops and prison guards are the predominance of this neighborhood. Couldn't have landed in a better place. My wife bought this house when she first moved out here. So it's like, but it's a cop neighborhood, and there's cameras and alarms and lights and everything. Just everywhere. It's like, and my house is definitely no exception to it. You can see it from the beginning and ending of each street and the next street over. And if the power's cut, it's all on solar and standby. You may get me, but you're gonna be seen. You're gonna get got yourself. So, you have to be aware of your surroundings and what you deal with. And like I said, the Danny Green school of thought. I'm not looking over my shoulder. I'm not going to live my life that way, But I'm going to use a pound of caution instead of an ounce of caution. And I'm going to make sure that I check things everywhere. I check for tails. I check for double back tails. Check for things when I'm at the markets and stuff. Which is ironic. I see a whole lot of guards, prison guards, at these markets that I go to. You go to Costco. There's just prison guards everywhere, and it's like just the craziest. So I started being more aware. And when I got busted. I knew where I stood, so I knew somebody was going to start coming eventually. But as things turned out, I did things the right way as I was coming up and on my way out. I took care of the right kind of people that were beholden to me, not them. They cared more about me and what I'd done for them than they did fearing the brand. And so when people tried to get next to me, these skinheads, these NLRs, the people that I knew that were beholden to me, the regular guys on crews, they would never even let it get that close to me. They would just, there was a guy in the county jail. He butchered this guy. And he was already facing a triple homicide. He figured, I'm going to go to death row. I'm going to ride this all the way out. This guy, Casper's putting in work. I'm not going to let him outdo me, number one. And number two, if these guys are coming through, I'm going to use that. I'm going to ingratiate myself to homeboy, And so, there's people that are just, So, the first real chance they got at me was to Hatchby Max, which was my reception center. Chino was no longer the reception center. They had a shot in Palm Hall, but once again, the guards, the people that were there, they were more ingratiated to me. I had a really good style about myself. I never slammed the door in anybody's face. I made more friends than enemies through this life on both sides of the law. And in all circles, even some that were not favored by the organization. So when it came to that, I had a little network of people that were looking out for me, as do I now, So I'm by no means untouchable. Every man can be got, especially if I'm coming after you. If I was somebody still in the game, I'm going to get you. And if somebody's serious about getting me, they're going to get me. But they're going to pay in their efforts for it, too. Don't be surprised if I get you when you come to get me as well. We'll either bleed out together. We'll see Valhalla together, But I'm certainly not in the mix, you know. I'm trying to do consultant work, you know, as a prison consultant, you know, gang expert up to a certain degree. I'm not going to testify, you know, against anybody. I'm not going to do anything like that. But at the same time, you know, I would like to take my experience and my knowledge and convert it to something positive and good now. Uh, you know, I'm trying to pay it forward in society for the monster I once was to you know, the human I'm learning to become again, and and I like being human. You know, I don't ever want to have to raise my hands in violence ever again, and you know, I'm proud of the fact that I've never harmed an honest citizen or civilian, and you know, if somebody comes after me or mine, you know what, with extreme prejudice, I will do everything I can to terminate you, and short of that. I just want to live a peaceful life, and you know, I'd like to consult, you know, producers and making their movies or documentaries or other TV shows or prison consulting or you know whatever kind of stuff goes on with that because it's something that I know forward and backward. That's going to be hard to beat, you know, in the way of information. I see a lot of stuff where over the years I've watched from prison. I say I'm highly disappointed in that. I don't know who these guys were that are listed at the end as their consultants. I don't know where they did their time at or what kind of life they were living, but that recognizes, I mean, I recognize none of that. It doesn't resemble anything that I've been going through or living, you know, and so, you know, it's interesting. I had a chance to see the movie Shot Caller, which I begged off like the first 3 times it was offered to me while I was incarcerated. And somebody had a tablet and they said, "Yeah, you really need to watch this, man. I think you'll find some things interesting." So I watched it, and you know, some of it's very realistic, and a lot of it's a lot of BS and you know, fluff and fanfare. But what I found interesting, which they thought I'd find interesting, is a lot of that was modeled after me from the several different characters, little pieces of it. The Huntington Beach connection, the comments that I made in the National Geographic about how we were all once somebody's little boy. We were all somebody's, just a lot of that stuff that was used. And most importantly, the 4-leaf clover as opposed to the 3-leaf one. I got shamrocks here, but the 4-leaf clover was something that me and 2 other people put together right after everybody was told to step back and stuff. It was an allegiance to each other, to stand by each other no matter what, not betray each other, not click. And so only 3 of us have that. But if you notice the character Redwood in Shot Caller, the one who ends up killing the guard and goes to death row eventually, when he's got his arms up on the gate, they make that he's got that 4-leaf clover there with the black little diamond out in the middle. Well, that black diamond out was originally a white swastika. And then I had myself and that guy and a few other guys that came after that made up that crew on the streets. We darkened it out, and so it became a black diamond, you know, but it was really covering up that white swastika that was originally in the middle of it. But there's nobody else that I've ever known of that's used that. I mean, we created that. I created that. And there was a reason, because there was 4 of us originally that it started with, each one of us making up, and 1 extra leaf, then the shamrock, to show the allegiance within, because people were starting to click up, you know, when it was getting dangerous. I mean, people were killing each other. And so there was a lot to that movie that's, you know, there's a lot of fluff to it. Some of it's got some reality to it, but there was a lot of myself I saw and a lot of the stuff from my life. And so I was kind of amused by that. Yet, you know, my wife had told me a couple of times that people had called her producers asking if I was willing to consult with certain things they were doing movie-wise. I didn't understand who was doing them or what they were. My answer was just outright no. I'm not interested, you know. You know, I'm sitting in the visiting room with my wife at Corcoran 2, you know, D facilities, SATF, and there's this kid who plays in a prison band, and he's got this girlfriend, and he's swearing up and down it's Mickey Hart's daughter and all this and that, you know, from the Grateful Dead. And I'm not really a Deadhead or anything, but you know, people tell lies in prison. Everybody's got a story, you know. We're sitting in the visiting room one day, and you know, he's telling everybody, yeah, he's coming to meet me, and you know, I'm going to meet Mickey Hart's going to be here. And so, you know, it's kind of hard to walk something like that back. And you know, well, he couldn't make it. You can only do that a couple of times. But lo and behold, there in the visiting room was Mickey Hart, and from the Grateful Dead. And he gets up and he walks over to me, and this guy says, no, Mick, no. And he comes over and goes, man, you're Casper Crowell. He goes, man, you're famous. I'd like to shake your hand. I love your stuff. I've watched your stuff. And I said, yeah, I know who you are. I'm kind of a fan of your stuff myself. He goes, man, that's just crazy. I mean, you're here. And we talked for a minute, and then he went back to his seat, and because you're not allowed to cross visit. And, my wife is all, who's that? I said, Mickey Hart from the Grateful Dead. She goes, who's that? But it was funny. But the reason I was saying is because I told him, I said, you're confusing fame with infamy. I'm not famous. I'm infamous. Fame is reserved for people that have done something good with their lives, enriched society and humanity somehow. I've certainly done my part for that, and I've tried to play makeup, catch up. But and I guess sometimes in my own way, I think that some of the things I've done certainly safeguarded and enriched society. But I'm sure from other aspects, it's not looked at that way. And so I don't embrace or espouse an ideology like that anymore. I think about people's family members that are attached to those people, no matter what kind of ugly soul they were. Everybody has loving people that are normal, honest citizens, and they're collateral. Their lives are left wrecked in the wake of. And so I don't ever forgive myself for that. I have nightmares. I have demons that I live with. I'm genuinely remorseful to people that were affected by any of my actions, no matter who they were, whether they're in law enforcement or civilian life, that were associated or attached to this. I had to put together a report on my victims and such forth when I was getting ready for parole board. And I cited all my victims of my crimes that I was convicted of and some that I wasn't. But even more so, I cited a person who I'll never know was there, that was sitting in his or her automobile, that had a traumatic experience in their life that required medical services or whatever, unbeknownst to me. And there they are, triggered with their PTSD from the sirens wailing by while they have to pull over on their way to wherever, just triggering whatever they had to go through again. And I caused that with my action. Another thing is that when I joined any facet of organized crime, unwillingly and unbeknownst to them, my family and loved ones joined it with me, and my neighbors. And I never thought about stuff like that, Sean, until I had to sit down and really think about who my victims were. And I've never really been uncomfortable in my own skin before that. And I'm making peace with who I am and what I've done now. And I'm trying to pay it forward by using this experience to do the right things, to hopefully keep other people from having to be assuaged for the pain they experience. Like people just like me, maybe even preventing things. I just, like I said, that's part of that writing the book thing. You have to be brutally honest about who you are with yourself. Don't f*** everybody else. And it's not a comfortable place to be sometimes. And unless you're a narcissist or a psychopath, you don't just gloss over those things and like they're blemishes that you can put some makeup on and make look better than they are, because they're not. And, I had an old wise guy friend of mine. He took a real good shine to me. This guy was kind of notorious within the Bonanno crew. And he was out here in Palm Springs at the time living. And, I spent a lot of time with him whenever I needed a place to go and recharge my batteries and whatnot, such forth. But he told me, there's two things you go to sleep with every night that nobody else will never know what it's like in your head, but you can't escape. The things you've done and the things you should have done. And a lot of those things will haunt you if you're honest enough with those considerations. He goes, guys like us, we learn to go to sleep really quick when we put our head on the pillow. But sooner or later, sleep won't come. You'll be insomniac, and it'll be those things that you can't escape, those voices in the dark. And son of a bitch if he wasn't right. And I have a lot of sleepless nights. The other night I was up most of the night, just every 5 minutes. I just couldn't sleep. And, I do PTSD stuff through VA now, best thing I did was go in the military, thank God for honorable discharge in VA. VA has just been there for me since I got out. Though I have private insurance, that's fairly good too. But, I deal with a lot of these things through that. I got PTSD to the hilt. Anybody who's done any kind of time, no matter what it was, just as a regular guy doing his time, who's been involved in the mix, even on the most, peripheral levels. They do a nickel or they do a dime, and that's why I say you shouldn't discredit yourself with 6 years. It's a nickel and change, You can't help but be exposed to the daily rigors of watching people who speak your language, look like you dressed in battle fatigues, shooting indiscriminately, placing you in manacles, beating people, where the corruptions are. You cannot escape that without being touched by that. We just tell ourselves that's for weak motherfuckers. I don't have a weak mind or a weak heart. You buy into your own goods, but PTSD, man, it's real and it touches anybody who's done more than a nickel, especially if they've done it in a violent environment. And you can't unring a bell. You can't unsee what you've seen or heard. You can't unhear it. There's not enough white noise to drown it out. There's not enough beautiful sunsets to paint over it. And unless you're some kind of psychopath, and there's guys that'll see this that were part of the life. They'll say, "Well, I'm not a psychopath, but I'm not weak." I can say, you're only lying to yourself. Sooner or later, if you live long enough, this is going to come knocking at your back door. And if you don't let it in, it'll kick the door in and it'll come get in bed with you, and it'll be your best companion. And I read between you and your old lady, or whether you sleep alone, it's going to be there with you in your head. And I think that's a lesson that nobody tells you about. Nobody talks about a lot of things because it would not be good for recruitment or good to keep you around or good. There's a lot of warts and blemishes that nobody. Bobby Wayne used to tell me, he goes, "Man, there's all this glitter and gold that you see. It's rust. It's rust that's just catching the glint of sunlight. You get close enough to it, you'll realize it's rust. This is rust, man. Rust eats away at healthy steel in a healthy machine." And he tried to deter me because he thought enough of me. And I thought so much of him that he cut such a great figure that I wanted to be like him. And that was there was an error in judgment right there, But
Casper, earlier on, you mentioned the Colombos and the Bananos. Michael Francis, he's coming to the UK this year. He's doing a tour. I'm going to be hosting it. Did you ever come across Michael Francis in your dealings back in the day?
I don't know that I have or I haven't, to be honest with you. He would probably remember better than I would because I was not Italian, number one. There's a lot of guys like that that end up doing things with their businesses. But I'm sawed off, I don't think of too many other people, other than Sammy the Bull, but he's one of them, but it's sawed off like that and built like that. And, Palm Springs was the seat of the Western crime network. So, he would know better than I don't recall him prior to seeing his case unfolding, that's when I first heard his name. So
he's been very successful on YouTube.
Yeah, so I saw it. I've not looked at any of these until the other day. 4 days ago, first time I saw any. I've been seeing them. I've got them on my phone, pictures them with my images all over these things. And I'm saying, what's this about? I want to see what this is about. They mentioning me, they talk about it, using footage, and a lot of things you show footage of me without saying anything about me. And so it's like, I'm just sitting there thinking, you know what? People watch this stuff and they get an idea. I'll give you a good example. I thought for sure this would hurt my chances of parole if it ever came about. In 2013, there was a a director of corrections in Colorado State Prison System who was executed at his doorstep at home. And they showed my pictures with all that, associating that with that, and something called 311. I don't know if you remember that. But then a justice of the peace, or DAs, two DAs got killed in Texas. And once again, they showed my pictures associated with all of that. Well, I sued CBS and ABC for an undisclosed amount of money. They settled with me. But they said, well, it's public purview through National Geographic's footage and everything else with the public. I said, no, it's not. And they tried to hit me with anti-SLAPP law and all this. I said, look, you're ruining my chances of any parole commissioner that I have to go before, or anybody who I ever do anything honest with, who's going to look at that and just associate me with that, because you're showing this stuff all over the place. So you notice now, since then, they blur people's faces out and stuff like that when they show this stuff. I mean, I think I had a lot to do with that because they paid me. They paid me a good amount of little money for that, but I settled with them. And, the lawyer from CBS actually paid me a good comp. And if you ever get out, come look us up. We'll give you a job. I mean, you're a mean motor scooter when it comes to write legal briefs and legal letters. And, of course, that's all just chit chat because I can't seem to find work anywhere. And I don't want to do work firing legal briefs for somebody else all day anyhow. But, that's the kind of damage people do when they do things like that. So I'm looking at this stuff when I come home because I see all this stuff. And I'm looking at the dates. It says a year ago, 6 months ago. I can see stuff that's just a month ago or even 2 weeks ago. I mean, after I'm getting out, I see these things. And I've got them. I take pictures of them, screenshots with my phone, so I have a record of these things. And I tell the pro, I got nothing to do with any of this. I want you to know, we don't care. Make money if you can. I said, no, that's not it. I'm not in this. I'm not involved in this. It's not me. And so it's like I'm thinking these people are making money off my images and stuff like that. If that's going to happen, then I'm going to sit there and watch this. And I saw yours and his for Azizi's. I said these guys are very tasteful in the way they went about this, very clean and credible. And so you know what? If anybody's going to make money off this straight from their shows, it'll be who I decide, and I'll decide who I do this with. So you were the first person I contacted. And I left him a contact. I have not heard back from him. But you're the only two that I've contacted. And I won't be contacting anybody else. And hopefully this will open some doors for me. If not, at least I'm telling my side of what's going on and what happened. And, so.
And for people watching this, so below this video, if you're watching it on YouTube, is a description box. And your preferred method of contact, if the opportunities arise, is your email address, is it, Casper?
Yes, sir. It'd be Casper Odinson at yahoo.com.
All right. And we will also put down the links to the books on Amazon that are so highly reviewed and rated. We'll get them down there as well. So if you do have any opportunities or if you're interested in the books, please go down and check those links. Huge thank you to Casper for spending so much time with us today. I mean, we've only covered a fraction of his stories. It would be great to get him back on at some point in the future to do a part 2. Let us know in the comments if you'd like to see Casper come back on and what you thought about this video today. And, like Casper said, he doesn't ever want to raise his hands in act of violence again. And we wish everybody around the world much love and respect and peace. And Casper, have you anything to say to the viewers who've been watching this for 3 hours with us in a closing remarks?
Only that I have no ulterior motive or hidden agenda here. I'm not looking to get rich or anything. Hopefully I can make some connections to do something to make money legally and honestly through consulting. I serve my gods and my folk today, I've been serving them all this time, but I got to a point where I couldn't reconcile the two anymore. So my faith wins out. And, I'm only doing this now. I had to really, really meditate on this, decide if I wanted to do this or not, because I serve a lot of people out there. I have an online ministry and the holynationofodin.org and the Holy Nation of Odin Facebook's friends page, the group page. And so, that's what I do. I try to give back. I try to, whatever's left of my life. I have end-stage liver disease, so stage 4 cirrhosis from all the tattoos, in prison. So they told me I'd be dead 5 years ago. It's 7 years ago, actually. So I'm just taking care of myself. I work out, I eat right. Whatever's left in my life, I just want to do right with it. I want to balance the scales, and I want to pay it forward. And if I can help people not make the same mistakes I did, or help in their daily jobs, educate youth to not want to make the mistakes that I did, then I'm doing something good. And that's what I'm trying to do. And that's all I want to do.
Yeah, and we salute you for that work. So, viewers, thank you for watching this. Let us know in the comments what you think, and we will see you next time. Take care out there, wherever you are in the world.